If they do the 1.5 million barrels per day, which has not been agreed to by OPEC Plus, and Russia being a key constituent there, that would reduce supply by 3.5%, which would be roughly in line with flat demand or even slightly declined demand, which hopefully puts the market more in balance. But right now, the market seems to be shrugging off the decisions that were even made today, and they seem to be unimpressed by the actions that have been taken.
Regina, earlier this morning, Jeff Curry of Goldman Sachs came on Bloomberg Surveillance and was talking about how he expects oil prices to fall, and I'm talking Brent, could fall to $40 or even below per barrel this year in terms of the expectations of growth. Do you agree?
I do not agree that it will go that low, but I did not believe that we would be in this territory. So without decisive action tomorrow, it could potentially be 40, I would say, for WTI. I find it hard to see a scenario where Brent dives below 40, but we don't know what's happening with the coronavirus, and the market is incredibly jittery and not very rational right now.
So, Regina, there was some news out earlier today that Exxon is slowing the pace of its flagship shale project in the Permian Basin. So obviously this raising more concerns that the folks in the Permian having a tough time at these oil levels. What are your clients telling you?
Right now, they're saying it's still stay the course, steady as we go. And I think the very large companies have made bold moves to reassure investors. We're focusing on the dividend. We're guaranteeing the dividend. We're focusing on value. We're keeping CapEx in line with expectations. They're hopeful that this is a 4 to 6 month process and we'll ultimately see ourselves wash out of this. And in the end, we have to make these big decisions because these are long lead time efforts. If we stay in the Permian, there are players that operate more on the brink, and the larger players are hoping, perhaps, that they'll get some of those other players out of the market, which bodes well for future Permian activity.
How significant will the bankruptcies in the shale patch be this year?
I anticipate that they will go up. We need to see consolidation. There are still too many fringe players, and the checkerboard of acreage is still too patchy. The bigger players are consolidating, and they can operate more effectively, but there are moves that need to be made. Going down into the 40s, that could drive more of the bankruptcies, and I anticipate that should tick up.
So, Regina, overall, let's assume we are facing, lower demand. What else can OPEC do on the supply front? Can they take it another level? And how critical is it having Russia as a part of this?
It's absolutely critical that Russia is a part of it. That's, I think, what the market is waiting for. And I don't think that they can do a whole lot more, which worries in where probably the Goldman $40 scenario comes into play, because you can't just keep cutting. The market's not responding to that. What we really need to see is demand coming back, and some of the indicators that I would look for is a return to shipping. So we have idle manufacturing capacity. We have product that's in containers waiting to be shipped. We have ships that are in quarantine. Once we start to see the supply chains move more effectively and we see travel restrictions lifted and some of the self-quarantine activity be taken off, then demand comes back, and that, I think, will be the thing that buoys the oil price for the longer period.
There's a question about the elasticity of the market, just how quickly oil producers can ramp up production if things get back to normal. Is there concern that there could be a whipsaw here with oil prices diving and then jerking way back up as people start to generate some of the same trade and the same travel that they had before and without the inventories?
The oil production, supply chain, and production process cannot move as agilely and as quickly as that. So while some may say they're slowing down production, I don't actually see that having a material effect on declining production to have that whipsaw effect. If they could, they probably would, but they're not able to respond that rapidly, so I don't see that forecast.
Regina Mayer, thank you so much for being with us. Regina Mayer, Global Energy Head at KPMG, based in Houston, and right now we are seeing crude basically flat, traded on the NYMEX and in Brent, which is interesting.
Yeah, I thought it would have been up more today, but I guess this issue that they do not have Russia on board with this call for a 1.5 million barrel cut in production, that's a real problem for, I think, oil traders.
Well, also, I mean, to Regina's point, this is not a supply issue. Yep. This is a demand issue. So cutting supply isn't going to necessarily ameliorate the problem. Meanwhile, what we're seeing certainly in markets, downgrading growth expectations severely, all yields across the board coming down. I'm looking now at a 2-year 0.5835%.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom Keene, for that 4-digit issue. Looking at a 10-year yield now of 0.939%.
Yeah, exactly. We were up above 1% earlier this morning, but that did not hold at all. So again, the bond market really telling us something, as we've been talking about for a long time here. The bond market discounting probably a little bit sooner, probably a little bit more deeply about long-term growth effects for the coronavirus on the global GDP.
Yeah, coming up, we're going to take a look at the impact, in particular on the airline sector, uniquely hit by the spread of the coronavirus. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, folks.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. It's been a wild week of ups and downs on Wall Street. Stocks tumbling this morning as investors digest the latest developments when it comes to the coronavirus. Sentiment taking a hit after more cases of the virus popped up across the U.S. Homeowners are starting to lock in some of the lowest 30-year mortgage rates ever. Yet many in the business say the best deals may be yet to come. Mortgage rates that were sinking for much of 2019 are again hovering near all-time lows. And brokers say they're locking in 30-year rates south of 3% for some customers. HP said it rejected an unsolicited takeover offer from Xerox. The tech giant said the $34 billion offer, quote, meaningfully undervalued the company. And Kroger posted solid results with profit that slightly beat estimates while maintaining its guidance for the current year, displaying resilience in the face of fierce competition from Walmart and Amazon. Fourth quarter comp sales rose 2%. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100, plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search before you tick online today.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For something for everyone. Carpet Right. For life.
You could find a £5, a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres, ends 18th of March.
Dust. It gets everywhere. Look up there on the shelves. You need powerful help from your new hero, the lightest cordless stick hoover ever. The H3500 weighs little more than a kitten. It leaps between your staircase spindles, slides down the canyons in your curtains, and slips niftily into a kitchen cupboard. You also get a 1 in 10 chance of winning £250 cash when you buy any Hoover cordless vacuum. Heroes of the home at Curry's PC World. Terms and register at curryswin250.co.uk.
This is the sound of a Halifax customer who used to worry he wasn't saving enough, but is now saving the change every time he hops on a bus. Switch on Save the Change, and when you use your Halifax Visa debit card, we'll round up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your chosen Halifax savings account.
Had the same job for the last 15 years. Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
The moment you realise that radiator isn't warming up, it's freezing, and half the class are coming for a sleepover. The moment you realise you're covered by British Gas Home Care from £14 a month. That's just 46p a day, including parts and labour. Buy selected home care cover online by the 10th of March and get 1 month free. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas Home Care. Conditions apply. Prices vary by postcode.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Well, this coronavirus is just slamming airline stocks. The S&P 500 airline index down 26%. We'll get the latest on how the airlines are responding. Plus, we're going to chat with our good friend Nick Colas of Data Trek Research on whether he is buying the dips. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Well, Paul, we're well off earlier lows, but still well down. It's all attributable to coronavirus fears. Treasury yields are down to record lows as haven assets are still in demand. We look at those numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 1.7%, down 54. The Dow's down just about 2%, down 527. And the Nasdaq's down 1.3%, down 115. The 10-year's up 1. The yield is 0.9376%. The West Texas Intermediate crude oil is little changed at $46.77 a barrel, while COMEX gold is up over 1% at $16.60 per ounce. The dollar yen 106.72. The euro $1.1192, and the British pound $1.2922. We're getting word from Howard Ward, Gabelli Funds CIO, that there's a lot more uncertainty on the way.
Things are shutting down slowly but surely. Schools, which are now being closed more in Europe than here, they're starting to close here. So it's early innings. I would be patient. Patience, I think, is a virtue right now.
That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
When we talk about the disruptions to business in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak, we really have to focus on the airline industry, in particular the fact that there is a new estimate that more than $100 billion of revenue will be taken off the top line of airlines given the coronavirus outbreak. And for more details, Brendan Case joins us now, industrial, aerospace, and chemicals team leader for Bloomberg. Brendan, how are airlines responding to this?
So far, what they're doing is moving very quickly to cut costs. United and JetBlue have announced that they're going to trim flights in the short term. And I think we'll probably see a lot more of that. JetBlue was, in fact, very explicit about the need to preserve cash, which is certainly not a phrase that you would have expected the airline industry to be using just a couple months ago. This is an industry that has been consistently making a lot of money after all of the consolidation that it went through over the last decade, and now all of a sudden it's facing, a very, very big crisis.
So, Brendan, it's interesting here. How much and how quickly can these airlines cut their costs to offset slowing demand from consumers?
Well, they can certainly do things like pair their flight schedules. They can stop flying some planes, and they'll have a bit of a cost break on jet fuel, which also because of coronavirus has been going down quite a lot in price. But what they can't do is respond to a situation where where people just aren't flying. And we don't have a whole lot of great data about that yet. But, this is an industry that has said that it's ready for something like a recession, which would, entail certainly a consistent sluggishness in demand. But I think what people are wondering about now is just how sharp the drop in bookings will be over the next few weeks and few months.
Is anyone talking about actual insolvencies?
That seems like a little far-fetched, especially in the U.S. Certainly in Europe, you're already seeing it with Flybe going into administration today in Great Britain. There's also certainly other carriers such as Norwegian and Alitalia that have been financially weak in recent months. In the U.S., though, you've got an industry that is dominated by 4 or 5 really big carriers. And at this point, it seems like, barring, a situation that drags on and on, you've got companies that in theory, at least, should have the sort of the wherewithal to weather the crisis. But again, it depends on how it shapes up.
So, Brendan, we've been seeing headlines really over the last week or so about corporations severely curtailing business travel. Have the airlines also seen material cancellations just from consumers, vacation goers, that type of thing?
That's one of the questions that we're very keen to learn more about. Certainly, their comments about a sharp drop in demand over the last 24 hours would indicate that that's the case. We don't have a whole lot of insight about that, though. Certainly, we're in the spring break timetable, and the airlines are already getting ready for the summer travel season. But we don't have a whole bunch of data on that so far, the way we do have data on the business cutbacks that you mentioned, which last night, by the way, Boeing joined those ranks. Boeing said it would curtail a lot of non-essential travel and rely more on video meetings. And so there you have, one of the airline industry's biggest suppliers saying there's going to be less travel for our guys too.
Brendan, we've seen the share price of some of these airlines absolutely tumble. How much more does it have to go when you speak to analysts?
There was a note out this morning from Bernstein that was saying that it seems like the shares have maybe sold off a little bit too much if you posit that this will be a relatively temporary disruption. The big question, though, is, if you have a situation, let's say 3 or 6 months from now, where people are staying home, schools are closed, nobody's flying, it's really anybody's guess how bad it could get.
Brendan, is there any indication from the companies that they're considering layoffs?
Well, they haven't used that word yet, but United did freeze hiring. It also halted any pay increases for management employees until July. And so certainly you're starting to see some indications that things could head in that direction if it gets bad enough.
Hey, Brendan, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Brendan Case, he's Industrial, Aerospace, and Chemicals Team Leader for Bloomberg News, joining us on the phone. We appreciate getting his thoughts on the airline industry. And you think about that, we hear from Dave Wilson day after day, Lisa, about how those travel, leisure stocks or cruise stocks are just getting absolutely crushed, kind of the initial point where investors are looking to sell.
I'm looking right now at the airline index, the sub-index of the S&P 500. Lowest level since September 2016, having its worst day at one point today since June 2016. So absolutely falling out of bed.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm looking at a chart just across the Bloomberg News, Bloomberg Terminal now. Just looking at the employment in the airline industry. And prior to September 11th, it was over about 650,000 total employment. Right now, we're down to about 509,000 in the industry. It's been recovering over the last 4, 5, 6 years. But the concern is when you think about the airline industry, you think about a highly paid, unionized workforce, and if you're looking at much slower demand, you have to take a look at your costs, and that presumably also means the employment as well. Looking at the market right here, S&P down 65, Dow down 624, Nasdaq down 140. So we've got the S&P and Dow all off over 2% here. We will have data checks coming up throughout the day. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you got?
All right, Paul, thank you. Elizabeth Warren is ending her presidential campaign after failing to win any states on Super Tuesday, including her own of Massachusetts. Bloomberg's Kevin Cirilli reports what remains to be seen is whether Warren will make an endorsement today.
Many of her supporters are dividing. So many of them are supporters of both Sanders and Biden and other candidates before they had dropped out. So it's not necessarily a monolithic movement that is similar to Bernie Sanders in the sense that her supporters are more divided.
Meantime, Joe Biden, the former vice president, continues to rack up endorsements. Just in, Congressman Benny Thompson of Mississippi has given his nod to the former vice president. Mississippi is one of 6 states holding primaries this coming Tuesday. And we should mention Michael Bloomberg, founder and majority owner of Bloomberg radio parent Bloomberg LP, has endorsed Joe Biden for president as well. New York City and New Jersey are both confirming new coronavirus cases today. The Trump administration has set a goal of making 1 million coronavirus tests available by the end of this week. But after hearing from health officials today,
my understanding is that 2,500 test kits will be distributed, they say the end of this week, which is like tomorrow. Each test kit can perform 500 tests. So if you do the numbers on that, that's 1.25 million individual tests.
That's Republican Senator Ron Johnson. Other senators, after hearing from health officials on Capitol Hill today, say it will take a couple of weeks to put the tests in use once they are received. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Message and data rate may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Sponsored by Witham, a forward-thinking, technology-driven advisory and accounting firm, helping clients be in a position of strength in today's modern business landscape. Visit Witham.com to learn more. The S&P sank more than 2% earlier as the market was swinging back and forth to fears about the effects of the fast-spreading virus in its latest yo-yo move. Just yesterday, the index had soared 4.2% in hopes that more aggressive moves by governments and central banks would ameliorate the situation. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is down 2.1%, down 67. The Dow's down 2.3%, down 633. And the Nasdaq's down 1.6%, down 144. The 10-year is up 1. The yield is 0.9248. The West Texas Intermediate crude situation, it's down 0.2% now at 46.68 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 1.2% at 16.6240 per ounce. The dollar yen stands at 106.55. The euro's at $1.12 even, and the British pound at $1.29.36. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's talk about volatility. Look at the VIX index right here, 36.07. That's up 4 points today. This thing just recently, a few weeks ago, was down around 12, 13. So incredibly higher risk being priced into the market. And we talk about market volatility. There's absolutely nobody better to do it with than Nick Kolas, co-founder of Data Trek Research. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. How are you thinking about the volatility in this market as whether you should be buying or selling here? Most people, it just scares the heck out of them.
Well, it is scary, and that's a very, very logical response, at least an emotional one. If you look at the VIX back to 1990 and look at where it kind of levels out and where it creates a buying opportunity, there's three levels that really matter: 42, 50, and 58, because that's 3, 4, and 5 standard deviations from the long-run mean.
I hope Tom Keene is listening.
So those are the levels, and it's worked beautifully so far. On Friday, during that really cataclysmic low around 1 or 2 p.m., it hit 49, right on top of 4 standard deviations, and so that was so far the bottom. So what we're telling clients is, if you want to trade this tape, look for those levels and don't even try until 42, and be prepared to kind of stick your toe in even deeper at 49.50.
It's interesting. For a long time, the low interest rate environment was said to be dampening volatility. Not so this time.
No, because the low interest rate environment was coincided with a low volatility of GDP growth, a low volatility of unemployment. Those numbers were getting better or at least flat for a long period of time, and now we have this shock that says we have no idea what happens next, and that implied volatility rises because the volatility of future economic reports are going to be volatile as well.
So, Nick, what did you make of the Fed rate cut, intra-meeting rate cut earlier this week? Panic or wise?
You know, it comes down to, I think, you got to read the Beige Book yesterday, because the Beige Book had 57 mentions of coronavirus or COVID-19, which is higher than the 38 mentions that tariffs got last year when they began to become a real issue. And I think, Chair Powell is a big fan of that Beige Book. He reads it. And so I think he probably looked at the draft over the weekend and said, this is going to be just as bad or worse as the trade war. And that's what engendered this 50 basis point cut.
Right now we're seeing Fed funds futures price in another 50 basis point rate cut later this month. What will that do in terms of stock valuations, in terms of volatility?
I mean, it feels like the answer is very, very little. I think it's the case where, the Fed is on the ship and guiding it, and it sees the iceberg ahead, and maybe it's too late to swerve, or maybe it's not, but you got to try. You got to turn the wheel as hard as you can and hope you miss it, or hope it's more of a grazing blow. I think that's the best they can hope for, and I think realistically they know that.
So, Nick, one of the things that Lisa and I talk a lot about is, the interest rate market in a 2-year point, 0.58 on the 2-year, the 10-year back below 1%. What does this tell you?
I tell you, that question, as our clients have asked that question more often than what does the volatility mean. They view the volatility as sort of a function of the virus, and that's probably right. They view the move in the 10 years perhaps warning something more structural, and they worry that America has kind of seen its best days, that economic growth is going to be very slow, structural GDP growth will be slower, inflation is going to be non-existent, we're going to end up like Europe and Japan, and that is the big worry. My counter argument is that we're not going to end up that way, that we still have, a fairly strong economy, a really strong tech sector, and all the things that create long-term economic growth, but it is a huge source of concern, far more than I would have thought.
Going right to that point with tech, what are the levels at which you buy?
So the way we look at it is tech is the most volatile part of the market, and so you have to basically think about where the market can go and how bad it can get. And there, not to go back to standard deviation math, but a 5% down day is a 5 standard deviation move. That is the kind of levels where you get real panic. And outside of 08, we've never really seen it for a very long period of time. So the bottom line is, if you want to trade tech, you wait for a big, big down day, a down 5% day on the S&P, where tech is down 7, 8, 9%. And that's the kind of low that you can safely nibble away at.
So if it goes down 9% more from here, Apple, Facebook,
in a day,
Google, in a day, you're in there buying.
Yep.
Interesting. So as we think about the market here, are you thinking about we are in fact in a, not a stagflation, but a lower growth for longer? Is that kind of your base case here over the next several years?
It is certainly the base case for at least the next year or two. I think there were early on, back in January, which feels like 1,000 years ago, there was a hope this was going to be a V-bottom kind of event. We look at Chinese pollution and traffic congestion data to get a sense of how quickly the Chinese economy is coming back online. The good news is morning and evening rush hour in the 5 biggest cities is now getting back to normal. And in Shenzhen, which is really important for tech, it's back to normal. Pollution is getting back to normal. But weekend traffic still very slow. Midday traffic still very slow. So this isn't going to be a V bottom. It's going to be a slow, grinding improvement higher, not just for the U.S., but everywhere in the world.
I was reading a Project Syndicate column by Harvard professor Kenneth Rogoff last night, and he was talking about how this is fundamentally different from other issues that the Fed and central banks globally have dealt with. And when we talk about, the idea of rate repression, we talk about no inflation. This time, he was arguing, could be different because the disruption is on the supply side, not the demand side. When you have a disruption in supplies, the demand is still there. That means prices get bid up and we could end up in a 1970s-like situation. Do you give any credence to that idea?
He's a super smart guy, so you can't just blow it off. But I'll tell you, I'll give you, two anecdotes. The first is the China traffic one. China consumer is not back. There is no, consumer demand in China to speak of for all the obvious reasons. Walking across town from the west side of Manhattan this morning, I was able to jaywalk across Park Avenue in the middle of the day because there was no traffic for a block and a half.
Congratulations.
It just says that normal midtown traffic, which is usually quite heavy, is extremely light in New York. That could be a function of tourism, which is obviously down. It could be a function of work from home. But I can tell you, having lived in New York my whole life, as you have, it looks very light out there. It's not quite back to 08 levels, but it is light.
What is your sense of how long it'll take to cycle through the U.S. economy? I mean, because the V is probably out of the discussion, as you were suggesting.
Yeah, the V feels like it's off the table for now, and it feels like it's 3 to 6 months. 3 months being kind of dragging your way down towards the bottom of whatever happens, and then 3 months coming back. And I think there's a piece of this that really revolves around holiday and Christmas as well, both from the supply and the demand side. Because if you do get an economic shock, then you do have a different picture going into holiday, and as well as the elections. So unfortunately, this touches on every single topic investors care about.
Nick Colas, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Nick Colas is co-founder of Data Check Research, joining us here in our Interactive Broker studios. Really interesting to see how the sort of people are trying to even imagine how to play in this at a time of such incredible volatility. You got a technical analysis on the VIX.
Yeah, I found that fascinating. If you're a professional investor, you're trying, I suspect, you're getting paid to manage money actively to try to pick your spots here. But boy, the volatility that we're seeing just day to day, and again, the VIX at 36.8, it makes it awfully difficult.
Indeed. Coming up, we've got Bloomberg Balance of Power driving the conversation forward when it comes to politics. This is Bloomberg.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listing.
As we move towards 1 trillion connected devices, compound semiconductors made in Wales are set to power the 4th industrial revolution. Wales also has one of the largest cybersecurity ecosystems in the UK and a thriving fintech industry. 8 universities are producing a talented tech workforce for the future, and our devolved government has a strong vision for growth. If you're looking to expand your business, go to tradeandinvest.wales. This is tech. This is Wales.
Want an easier way to run your business and take payments? You want Square. Whatever your business, sync it all together seamlessly with Square's integrated point-of-sale software, hardware, and e-commerce tools to make sure everything's square at the end of the month. Square is there whether you're taking payments for Square Meals or Square Extensions, squaring off your account, squaring up with your supplier, trading in Cathedral Square, or invoicing clients in Leicester Square. With no long-term contracts, no wonder millions of businesses around the globe have gone Square. Visit square.com/UK to learn more. And go Square. Authorised by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
You could find a fiver a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
Matt Letizia, what did you make of that performance today?
Well, it really was a game of two halves, to be honest, Jeff. Leicester came out in the first half really...
Letiz?
What's up, Jeff?
Run for it!
What the...
Move over, football. Cheltenham coming through. And Sky Bet are on the charge. With money back as actual cash, up to £10 if you lose on the first race of the festival. Sky Bet. That's betting better. Applies to first bet on first race at Cheltenham on losing singles and win part of each way singles only. Money back as cash, free bet stakes excluded, eligibility restrictions, T's and C's apply. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
Think you've seen a fridge freezer before? Just look at this LG InstaView door-in-door. Knock twice on the fridge door and you can see what's inside without even opening it. How cool is that? All LG fridge freezers keep everything fresher for longer with innovative cooling. More taste, less waste. And with all LG appliances, you can save up to £100 when you trade in your old one. Heroes of the home at Curry's PC World. Full terms at currys.co.uk.
Senator Bernie Sanders as well as former Vice President Joe Biden. And the map looks increasingly like it would be more of a positive for Joe Biden as we head into the next round of states that are going to vote in just more than a week. And that, of course, being Arizona, Ohio, Florida, as well as a handful of others. But for Senator Bernie Sanders now, based upon my reporting, David, I can tell you two things. One, they are trying to develop some type of operation for a contested convention. This has been in the works for several months now. But two, to try to change the trajectory and the dynamics of the race and what increasingly feels like a unified Democratic Party behind former Vice President Joe Biden.
He's taking on everybody right now. It seems like, okay, many thanks now to Bloomberg's Kevin Cirelli reporting from Washington. And now it's time to turn to Drew Armstrong right here in New York on what's going on with the coronavirus. And I would say, Drew, a lot of the talk is about testing. Are we prepared to testing? You've been talking about this for a while. We should have had Alex Azar, the head of HHS, coming. Well, 75,000 maybe by the weekend. They're not going to get the million out they talked about.
Well, I want to talk about why this is so important, because with a infectious disease like this, the key method that we have in our arsenal to try and stop this thing is basically to say, hey, identify people who are infected and you stop them from spreading it to other people by saying, stay home or be in the hospital or whatever, depending on how sick they are. And if you can't test people, you can't do that. And so what we've seen in the wake of that is these after the fact cases where someone gets so sick that they end up in the hospital, a severe case. Then the public health workers have to go out and they find out, holy moly, while this person was walking around sick out in the community, they infected their family, they infected some of their coworkers or something like that. You're basically always behind. Without wide diagnostic testing, being able to surveil this stuff in the same way we do the flu and other diseases, you're perpetually, several steps behind the disease.
So, Drew, you cover healthcare so carefully. What's between us and that wide diagnostic testing? Is it money? Is it the science? Is it manufacturing? What's the bottleneck?
I think all of those things are probably the answer. I mean, we have seen some loosening of the ability to do some of this testing. Private companies are now bringing this stuff online. I think one of the big issues has been that these tests have more or less only been available at a select number of public health labs. But that's not how people interact with the health system. That's how, when we have a severe case or an incident, that you go and do that diagnosis. What people can't do and haven't been able to do, but hopefully will be able to do soon, is say, hey, I am feeling symptoms that seem to be this thing. Yeah. Go to their doctor, get the test done, and then get good medical advice where you can put the entire healthcare workforce into the effort of trying to contain this disease for both people who may be only mildly ill but spreading it around, as well as people who are more severe that you need to treat more carefully.
It cannot come too soon. Okay, thanks so much to Drew Armstrong. And now let's turn to oil and OPEC. We have the delight of having Anne-Marie Hordern, normally in London. She's here with us in New York right now. So big meeting over in Vienna, and they're playing sort of hardball with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, exactly. They're kind of putting Putin in a corner, and it's a risky bet on the Saudi part. Last meeting, they didn't come out with this OPEC communique on the day OPEC met. They wanted to wait for Russia to get on board. But today, they decided to say OPEC agrees to cut 1 million barrels a day. The plus part, a.k.a. Moscow, you need to pick up that 500,000 barrels extra. The problem is Russia doesn't really want to cut. They don't really need to cut. They need $40 a barrel to budget their books. country like Saudi Arabia needs close to the IMF says $84 a barrel. So it's a risky gamble. If Russia was to walk away, it would be very interesting to see what the Saudis would do.
Well, that's my question. Does the million go away if the 500,000 doesn't get done?
That remains to be seen. I think right now the Saudis are playing hardball. Iran's Bijan Zanganeh, the oil minister there, said he was in that meeting. He said there's no plan B. If Russia says no, the deal's over.
Wow.
But then we could see a massive price collapse, which of course we do know Riyadh would not be happy with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's had a tough time of it, that's for sure. Okay, thanks very much for Anne-Marie Hardern reporting right here from New York. And you can find more on the OPEC meeting on Bloomberg Commodities Edge. That's going to be coming up at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Among other things, they're going to talk to the CEO of Chevron. Now, let's get a check on how the markets are doing today. If we want to know, I'm not sure. Here's Abigail Doolittle. So it's a bad day again.
Yeah, it's a bit bearish out there, risk off. We're really in a new volatility regime where we're having huge moves up and down depending on the news and the sentiment of the day. So today there's a bit of a risk off tone. We have the major averages lower. We have the Dow Transports, which has been leading the way down since the beginning of this virus outbreak, because of course the airlines hit so hard. Just yesterday, United Airlines saying they're going to cut flights. They're putting hiring on a freeze. So the unknown around this coronavirus and what the impact will be on the global economy. And now here in the U.S., you were just talking with Drew Armstrong about the lack of testing. Until we know what the situation is here, we really don't know what the true impact will be on the corporate profit outlook.
To oversimplify, are we basically watching, on the one hand, the authorities saying, we're going to fix it, markets go up. Then you say, oh no, it's worse than we thought, markets go down. It seems to be sort of a yin and yang, back and forth between, are they going to fix this or not?
There is certainly some sort of pull there, push-pull between having a sense that, yes, they will fix it, and no, maybe they won't. And right now, if they're not testing people, it's impossible to fix in a way. So that uncertainty, again, for companies, because all of a sudden, if they do get those million tests out, and I don't know what the infection rate would be, but if they get a million tests out and X number test positive, that could really create some concerns, and at that point, close movie theaters, schools, like they're doing in other countries, and that would go right to the bottom line, because that's what investors are looking at.
As you say, it could be bad news, but at least we would know. Right now, we just don't know.
And it's that uncertainty. Fear has no bottom, and we're seeing that with these down days. And importantly, banks really getting hit because we have this huge bid for bonds, so yields are going down. The KBW Bank Index in particular, right now, David, in a bear market, confirmed to get much worse. So it seems as though this volatility and uncertainty that you're talking about really could extend further. The Japanese yen, on the other hand, up sharply, up 4%. Incredible move for a currency in a very short period of time.
Haven. Okay, thanks so much to Abigail Doolittle for that report on the markets. And now we're going to turn to Mark Crumpton because he is here with Bloomberg First Word News.
David, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is dropping out of the Democratic presidential race. Bloomberg has learned that Warren told her staff this morning and plans to make a public announcement later today. Senator Warren's path to the nomination has been narrowing since the first round of voting in Iowa, where she placed third. In subsequent contests in New Hampshire and Nevada, she dropped down to fourth. In South Carolina, Warren came in a distant fifth, and on Super Tuesday, she failed to win any states. 11 people in the United States have now died of coronavirus, and federal authorities are investigating a Seattle area nursing home at the center of a virus outbreak. At least 6 of those who died lived at Life Care Center in Kirkland. Federal officials are sending inspectors to the site along with experts from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to figure out what happened and determine whether the facility followed guidelines of preventing the spread of infections. Turkey is sending special forces to protect its land border with Greece. Ankara wants to prevent Greek officials from pushing back migrants trying to cross into Europe. There have been frequent clashes with Greek police firing tear gas, stun grenades, and water cannon to repel thousands of people trying to breach the border. The European Union and its former member Britain are far apart in trade talks after the first round of negotiations. EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier says the 4 main sticking points relate to the so-called level playing field, judicial cooperation, governance, and fisheries. The teams are expected to meet every 2 to 3 weeks, alternating between Brussels and London. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks very much, Mark. Coming up, another one bids farewell, and it's now a 2-man race, and yes, they are both men, between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden to take on President Trump in November. We'll discuss the pathways for each. That's coming up, Balance of Power, on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The slide steepens again as stocks tumbled. Volatility is sparking by the spread of coronavirus continues to grip financial markets. Treasury yields are down to record lows as haven assets remain in demand. The S&P fell more than 2% as wild swings pile up. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P is now down 2.6%, down 83. The Dow's down 2.8%, down 759. And the NASDAQ is down 2.2%, down 200. 10 years up 1. The yield is 0.9216%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.3% at 46.67 a barrel, with COMEX gold up 1.2% at 16.62 per ounce. The dollar yen 106.56. The euro is $1.1187. And the British pound $1.2931. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. Now more of Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. It's been quite a week in the presidential race. Super Tuesday gave a big win to former Vice President Joe Biden, and the field narrowed dramatically, with the latest departure coming just today of Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. To take us through the big week in politics, we welcome now our panel of Jennifer Nassour. She is founder of Conservative Women for a Better Future and also former chairwoman of the Massachusetts Republican Party. She comes to us today from Boston. And Mark Postenbach. He is Senior Vice President in the public affairs firm of Rock Solutions. Mark joins us today from Washington. So, Mark, let me start with you as a practical matter. Elizabeth Warren's out now. It's a two-person race. What are the paths for Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden?
Well, I think, first of all, what's important to understand, as you alluded to earlier, is that Joe Biden's wins on Super Tuesday were enormous. We've not seen anything like that in a number of years. You saw double-digit wins across the board. You saw increased turnout. You saw, for example, Virginia, record turnout, 60 to 70%. Up those 60 or 70% numbers, you saw Joe Biden win by 30%. So that's something that people didn't expect, but you're seeing the party and voters consolidate around Joe Biden. And I think, going into the next round of primary states, March 10th and March 17th, he's in a pretty good position with delegates.
So Jennifer, how does it look from the other side of the aisle? Because after Iowa and even New Hampshire, it wasn't clear there would be that much enthusiasm, that much voter turnout. Particularly New Hampshire, Iowa was disappointing. Does it look a little bit more troubling for the Republicans right now? Because there seems to be quite a bit of enthusiasm and getting a lot of voters out now on the Democratic side.
Well, I think that the Democrats are doing a great job of being able to excite voters. But here's the issue on the Republican side is that there is no primary. So there's no reason for the voters to come out and turn out on that side. In Massachusetts, 56% of our electorate are actually unenrolled voters. So that means that on primary day, they get to choose to vote in the Republican or the Democratic primary. And so many people I know ended up voting in the Democratic primary because they felt the stakes were so high. I don't think that necessarily translates to Election Day.
Mark, as we look now at this two-person race, really, between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, has Bernie Sanders just demonstrated any ability to bring out more voters that wouldn't be voting otherwise? He really likes to appeal to the young base, no question about it, but it's not clear he's getting more young people voting this time than, for example, 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, it's an important thing to think about is, Senator Sanders has talked a lot about getting out the vote, as you said, about increasing the number of young people, but so far we really haven't seen that. In states, as I said earlier, where you've seen an increase in turnout, it's largely gone to Joe Biden. And I think that, is happening across the board. You're also seeing Joe Biden be able to create a diverse coalition. You had him winning more than 60% of African-American voters. You're seeing a lot of support from suburban women who helped propel the blue wave in 2018 for Democrats. So I really think that, that's one of the things he's going to have to do moving forward, and Joe Biden's already shown that he can do that.
Jennifer, I wonder what you think about the general lay of the land, because coronavirus, at least at the moment, and it looks like it will keep going at least for, 2-3 months at least, has really changed some of the political dynamic here. The voters may be looking for something a little bit different. President Trump was very strong in the economy, on tax cuts, on growing the economy. Now people are worried about their physical safety, and the economy itself may really waver a bit. Does that make it a more difficult path for Donald Trump come November?
No, I don't actually think so, because in politics, 6 months is an eternity. And so what we can see from here, Corona is not going to last past the summer, right? I mean, just like the flu ends, this will end at some point. There'll be vaccines. The nicer weather will break this up. But as long as the economy stays strong, the president remains in a very good position.
Yeah, I wonder if you agree with that, Mark, because I did talk with Larry Summers, actually, just a couple of days ago, and he said, actually, if you look at the numbers, what happens in the second quarter, and particularly people's disposable income, really influences their voting decisions come November. There's a bit of a lag.
I think one of the things to really think about, too, is the message that, the vice president is employing in the primary here. He's talking about growing in the economy, certainly, but also making sure that it's helping those in the middle class, that you're seeing wages increase, that, looking also at some of the actions that he and President Obama took in order to steer the economy in the right direction following the economic crisis. I think that's going to continue to be an issue, and I think that, putting forth plans, as the vice president has, and other candidates have as well on the Democratic side, is going to be particularly important.
Jennifer, I wonder how you think health care and the issues of health care coverage will play come November. And is the Supreme Court making it a bit more complicated? They've actually taken the case now where the administration is arguing against Obamacare, and they're not going to decide it before the election, but the arguments will happen, it looks like, in October. Does that make it a little more tricky from a political point of view?
I don't think so. I think that at the end of the day, Americans are smart enough to know if they can put a roof over their family's head, they can put food on the table, and they have a job that they can go to every day, that is the most important election factor. And I don't think that anyone is looking at anything else. You see that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren primarily made such a big deal over health care. And where is Elizabeth Warren today? She's no longer in this race. Bernie Sanders is only appealing to young voters. And we know statistically, young voters have not come out to vote in elections, and that it's mostly older voters and it's suburban white women. And if you're not going to get them and you're not appealing to them, it doesn't, all these other issues won't even make a difference.
Well, Mark, I wonder what your response is to that, because as Jennifer suggests, and we certainly hope that by the summer or so, maybe coronavirus will not be that big an issue, and we'll go back to the question, am I better off? Do I have a job? Do I make more money? Doesn't President Trump still have the upper hand on that if you look at the numbers overall for the country?
Yeah, I think that's an important question. I do think, as I said before, the key will be understanding how to articulate that message, how to put forth policies that are going to continue economic growth. I think at the end of the day, there are a number of different things that they're going to be looking at. You mentioned healthcare as well. Donald Trump and the Republican Party don't really have an alternative that they laid out. They want to go after the Affordable Care Act, but they're not offering an alternative in terms of policy, but they're also not articulating very well why healthcare is so important, why it's a big issue, and they have not really addressed that. And until they do, I think that's going to be a particularly big liability.
So, Jennifer, I wonder, from your point of view, if I can ask you to speak for the Republicans for a moment, if you had your druthers, if you had your choice, come November, what issue would you like this election decided on?
Well, I think at the end of the day, this is going to be between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And so the issue is going to be, who do you trust more with what is going on in your home? What's going on with your family? What job do you have? Who do you feel secure with when it comes to the economy? Because if the economy collapses and everything else goes with it, and so people then feel unstable. And so at the end of the day, I think the economy is the number one issue.
Okay, many thanks to Jennifer Nassour. She's founder of Conservative Women for a Better Future, and Mark Posterbach with Rock Solutions. Great to have you both with us. Coming up, the coronavirus grips the global economy. We speak with Huawei Chief Security Officer Andy Purdy about the effects on Huawei's supply chain. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
"25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
A PAC needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. The coronavirus is gripping the global economy and has brought an immediate shock to supply chains that threatens to ripple out into the future. One of the companies coming to terms with these challenges is Chinese tech giant Huawei. And we welcome now Andy Purdy. He is Chief Security Officer of Huawei Technologies. She's coming to stay from Chicago. So, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, give us a sense, how much of Huawei's operations are in Hubei province or in exposed regions?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how many people we have working there. In the short term, we're able to sustain what we need from our supply chain and our manufacturing facilities. As time goes on, there could well be a greater impact on our ability to sustain production.
How much has come back from what initially happened, as far as you can tell? Do you have a sense of roughly the percentage of capacity you're operating at now in China?
Well, we're at a pretty high capacity. We have not come up shared internally a number of what percentage of full capacity we're at, but we're able to function at a pretty high level of operation, and so for the immediate future, things still look bright for us. Our primary concern is making sure that our employees are safe.
Well, what about that? Do you have employees who have it exposed to the coronavirus? As far as you know, do you have cases that you have to deal with?
I don't know whether we've had any cases. The last official report I saw, we did not have any cases, but we're taking very extreme measures internally. We've identified key employees that can work from home. We've done special measures in terms of multiple testing each time people enter a building, cleaning public spaces every 45 minutes to an hour, closing the major cafeterias, making them takeout only, extending the shuttle buses so that people don't have to ride public transportation as much. So we're taking the kinds of precautions, and I think our employees are well aware of what they need to do to protect themselves.
The Chinese government has done quite a bit to try to really contain this as best it can. That has curtailed travel, has curtailed a lot of activities in China. And that's understandable why they would do that, because the priority, as you say, is the safety of the people in the country. But has that interfered with your ability to get your business done in China as a practical matter? Is it difficult to move people and goods around the country?
No, so far it really has not impacted our ability, either the supply chain sources or ability to transport the goods. We have many more people working at home, though, and we've discouraged travel, both within countries and internationally, that only essential travel is supposed to be conducted at this time.
And that's on the supply level. What about the demand level? Is it curtailing people purchasing things that Huawei is manufacturing?
Yeah, we haven't seen any recent statistics in terms of impact potentially on consumer purchases or company purchases. We just announced that we've got 91 5G contracts, so we're moving ahead with that with basically all speed. So we really haven't seen much of an impact along those lines yet.
What about the acts by the Chinese government to stimulate the economy? We've heard various things from the PBOC, the central bank, but also from the government itself. Is that helping the situation economically in China? Do you have a read on that?
Well, as for stimulus, whether it's the stimulus by the Federal Reserve cut in the United States or stimulus measures in China, I don't know how much that impact's going to be. I mean, there's a lot of debate about whether the cut in the United States made a difference. There's a lot of people saying that the global economy is the likelihood of contracting this year regardless. So as a general proposition, I think stimulus by governments in various countries, China and the U.S., is probably a good thing.
What have you learned at Huawei from your experience? Because you're sort of ahead of a lot of U.S. companies in the sense that you're in China at ground zero, as it were. What have you learned that would be helpful to U.S. companies who are just now starting to come to terms with some of these issues?
You mean in terms of the issues regarding the virus?
Yes, exactly.
Well, I think, recognizing that over time, the informed consensus of the medical community, such as NIH in the United States or the Centers for Disease Control, that quarantine is one thing, but making sure that people actively take the precautions as individuals that you would take to prevent the possible spread of the flu, and recognizing the kinds of people that are at risk. So if they become infected, going into special facilities to be treated in a way that they're in a quarantine situation and they're getting the special care that they need. Over time, hopefully, and as lessons are learned from this experience, hopefully there can be more transparency from the beginning and throughout, so the information can be shared and people can be protected as quickly as possible.
Okay, Andy, thank you so very much for joining us today. That's Huawei Technologies Chief Security Officer, Andy Purdy, coming from Chicago. Up next, once hailed a front-runner, Elizabeth Warren exits the presidential race, making the Democratic primary a two-man race. We discussed with one of Bernie Sanders' backers in 2016, is Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Well, it looks like Wall Street can't seem to get off its roller coaster. U.S. stocks are falling on coronavirus concerns. The Dow is falling 757 points, S&P down 81. The Nasdaq is losing 195 points. But there are a handful of stocks posting gains today. They include Gilead Sciences, which is testing a potential coronavirus treatment, and Campbell's Soup is up, which says it's stepped up production of soup because demand is high. Well, the International Air Transport Association says the coronavirus outbreak will cost the airline industry as much as $113 billion in lost revenue this year alone. But concerns over the virus hasn't caused companies to cut jobs yet. In February, the number of layoffs announced by employers fell 16%, according to placement firm Challenger Gray and Christmas. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/C's Change.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Have you ever thought, I wish I'd had that information sooner?
What does this tell us about the state of deal making?
Let's fix that.
One unprofitable company plus another doesn't make a profitable company.
Carol Mazur.
Talk to us about real-world applications.
Jason Kelly.
Remind us what the potential is for everyday folks.
Bloomberg Business Week.
Vice President of Exploratory Science is one of the cooler titles.
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
From New York, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. For Bloomberg First Word News, we go now to Mark Crumpton.
David, as we've been reporting, Senator Elizabeth Warren has dropped out of the 2020 Democratic presidential race after seeing virtually no path to the nomination. Warren didn't win any states on Super Tuesday, not even her home state of Massachusetts. She has not yet addressed the question of which remaining candidate she will endorse. Bloomberg has learned that Warren told her staff this morning and plans to make a public announcement later today. It's a big job for just 7 people, but in the Dubai desert, 7 World Health Organization workers are racing to sort, package, and send out hundreds of shipments of medical supplies to countries around the world battling the coronavirus. Demand for protective medical supplies like masks, gloves, and gowns is skyrocketing as the virus spreads around the world. Cases have been reported in about 80 countries. President Trump says he'll deny federal funding to so-called sanctuary cities. On Twitter, the president cited last month's court ruling, which said his administration could block law enforcement funds to states and cities that don't cooperate with federal immigration authorities. The president said they should change their status to non-sanctuary. He added, quote, do not protect criminals, end quote. Federal prosecutors have charged the former head of the United Auto Workers with embezzling more than $1 million. The government says Gary Jones conspired with fellow union leaders to steal from UAW assets over a 9-year period that began in 2010. Prosecutors say they used the money for luxury vacations as well as high-end liquor and cigars. Jones resigned last year after being implicated in the corruption scandal. Federal agents raided his home in August. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. David?
Thanks so much, Mark. We have some breaking news right now on the coronavirus. The Telegraph now is reporting that there's been the first deaths from the coronavirus in the United Kingdom. We'll keep you apprised of that as it develops. And now let's come back from the United Kingdom to the United States and what's going on here with the coronavirus. Congress is stepping in to combat the disease. The Senate is scheduled to vote later today on a $7.8 billion bipartisan emergency spending bill to fund the response to the disease. Legislation that has passed the House already yesterday in an overwhelming vote of 415-2. For more, we welcome now a member of the Senate Appropriations Committee. He is Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon, and he comes to us from Capitol Hill. So, Senator, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. First of all, I know you followed this quite a bit. You've backed emergency funding in various ways for the FDA and others. Give us a sense as what's in this bill. What does this $7.8 billion go for?
Absolutely. Well, the FDA subcommittee
focused on the ways to oil the gears of the FDA so that it can act quickly and promptly in all aspects. That includes drug importation or ingredient importation. It includes looking at continuous production of key ingredients in the United States so we're not vulnerable to supplies from outside the United States. It looks at the ways to facilitate it and move faster the role of equipment and protective equipment and masks, and to make sure that we're prepared to really facilitate all the steps necessary for development of a virus.
So, Senator, focus on one thing, if you can, with us, and that is the testing, and particularly the test kits, because we've heard conflicting reports about when we're going to be testing, how many people we're going to be testing. We were told maybe it'll be 1 million. Now we heard the Secretary of HHS come out today. Maybe 75,000 will go in the mail on Friday. What is the problem with the testing? Should we be doing more of it? Is it because we don't have the money? Will this bill help us get the testing done?
Well, the bill will absolutely provide a lot of support for testing across the nation. And the challenge that we've had with the numbers is the lack of specificity. So, for example, it was the vice president coming before the Democratic caucus and saying there'll be a million tests in the mail. Well, no, not quite is the answer. And by the way, you need a couple tests for each person because a second test is done to confirm the first. And it means that they'll be mailed out to clinics across the country. When will they arrive? And how many will be at one particular clinic or hospital? And therefore, you have a supply that's not used immediately. So this was emphasized with the secretary and with the vice president. Don't overstate the response. If it means that we'll be able to conduct, if you will, 100,000 tests on Friday of this week, then put it that way so people have a more realistic understanding of how we're responding.
So are you confident we are on a path right now to get to the point where we can test enough people just to know what the size of the problem is? Because the testing goes to, we don't really know what the size of the problem is in the United States right now. It might be relatively modest. It might be much bigger than we think it is. Are we on a path to get there? And if so, do you have any sense of the time horizon for that path?
Well, the administration is saying we are on that path. But the numbers are very confusing coming from them, so I don't have complete confidence at when every doctor will be able to say, yes, I have a test, you have a symptom, let's find out. That's what people in America want to know. My impression is that's quite a few weeks away before we reach that point, but the numbers are coming at us in many different ways. But let's think about a couple key pieces of this. One is that people won't go to get a test if they think the test is going to cost a lot of money and they can't afford it. They have to pay their rent or their mortgage or their utilities. So really we should, as a matter of national policy right now, say these tests will be free to those who go and get them, right, so that is not an impediment.
So that makes sorry to interrupt you, but that just makes such good sense. I mean, we're told that something like 40% of households in the country can't afford a $400 emergency, and yet these tests, as I understand it, could cost $2,000 or $3,000. Is there money in this bill to say, okay, you don't have to pay for the test? Because I'm not sure we're going to get the testing done we need if people have to pay $2,000 or $3,000 to do it.
That's right. Well, that section of the bill I do not know. It's not a piece that I worked on. My impression is it does not say these tests will be free, but it should say that. And I think we're going to have a follow-up on this. We were pressing the Secretary of HHS this morning to have the policy that these tests will be free, they will be covered, and if we need more money, then let's go back and get more money to cover them. Let's also make sure that those who are afraid that ICE is going to hang out at the health centers, that they are assured that ICE is not going to target people there. A lot of people are afraid that they might become a public charge if they get a test at a healthcare clinic and thus lose their immigration status. We need to make sure that's not the case. And we need to make it absolutely clear we're way past the point at which this is an issue of quarantining those who are sick. This disease has been moving quietly through our population for many weeks. We have many people showing up who have no traceable source, and that means we have to treat it and understand it more like the flu than like, if you will, some disease that we could capture at the point of entry.
So Senator, are you confident that we have the protocols in place to deal with this as it pops up? And we had an instance just here in Westchester County where somebody went in with a problem with their lungs, and they were treated for some time and were exposed to healthcare workers before they figured out it was coronavirus, and now all those healthcare workers are exposed. Do we have uniform protocols across the country to protect our healthcare workers so we make sure we can fight this disease?
We are not there yet. So we had 5 states that had their first case, I believe, yesterday. It's spreading fast. Different healthcare units are developing their strategy for how they're going to treat it when somebody comes in with symptoms. Realize the symptoms are very common symptoms for a host of disease, and so you're going to have a lot of people that will be, well, from the medical point of view, possibly infected by coronavirus, but will turn out to be negative. But you have to treat it from the beginning as if they're infected. So those protocols is not fully developed. There's still shortages in the supplies of protective clothing, so on and so forth. So no, we're gearing up, but we're not there.
Okay, I just want to interrupt you for one moment, Senator. That is because there's a red headline that's just crossing the Bloomberg that the Prime Minister of Israel, Bibi Netanyahu, has reportedly fallen short of a parliamentary majority. This is according to the Associated Press. As we know, after the last election, the third in 10 months, the Prime Minister said he was confident he had a majority. It appears, according to the Associated Press, he's not going to be able to put together that coalition. Senator, let me come back to Senator Merkley now on this question of coronavirus. We've been talking about testing, about dealing with people as they come into hospitals and things. What about the longer-term issues of treatment, which is one thing, and vaccine, two very different things? Because you are involved with the FDA, you have some sense of that. Do you have any sense of time horizon? We heard from Scott Gottlieb, the former head of FDA, that maybe the fall, September, October for treatment, and then much longer for vaccine. Do you have a sense of that, Senator?
So we raised that this morning when we had the Secretary of HHS and many of the key healthcare professionals for a briefing for the Senate. And they said, when you hear this fall, set that aside. That is not going to happen. They said this fall might be somebody commenting on phase 1 or phase 2 of the development of a vaccine, but that really you're looking more at a year and a half or more to make that happen.
Okay, Senator, I really appreciate your time today. It was very helpful. That's Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon. He is a Democratic senator from Oregon. And now we're going to turn back to Senator Elizabeth Warren. She is going to be speaking outside of her home in Cambridge, Massachusetts momentarily. She reports of her dropping out of the race. Let's listen now to what Senator Warren has to say.
My campaign for president. I say this with a deep sense of gratitude for every single person who got in this fight, every single person who tried on a new idea, every single person who just moved a little in their notion of what a president of the United States should look like. I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick over and over. That's been the fight of my life, and it will continue to be so. Did anyone ever get
What guidance would you give to your supporters who don't know who to support now?
Well, let's take a deep breath and spend a little time on that. We don't have to decide that this minute.
And I wonder what your message would be to the women and girls who feel like we're left with two white men to decide between.
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those baby promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
Senator, why do you think
will you be making an endorsement today? We know that you spoke with both Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders yesterday.
Not today. Not today. I need some space around this and want to take a little time to think a little more.
We have been listening to Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts speaking outside of her home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, as she started out by saying she is suspending her campaign for president. And she said it was a very difficult decision for her to make, in part because she's very conscious of the fact that she was the last woman left in the race. And she was asked that question. She said that was one of the hardest things. She also said she's not prepared right now to make an endorsement, doesn't expect to make one today. The reports evidently that she's been speaking with Joe Biden as well as Bernie Sanders, but she's not ready to endorse anyone. But that's Senator Elizabeth Warren now officially suspending her race, surrounded by her husband and her dog, who was on the campaign trail with her. Coming up, as the nation and the world tries to come to terms with the coronavirus, we're going to talk with an expert on bioethics and the legal issues surrounding the fight against an epidemic. Nicholas Diamond of the Georgetown Law School will be joining us. This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and on radio.
If you promise to cover the...
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are taking yet another leg down with the S&P falling over 3%. It's all about the coronavirus as that continues to grip financial markets globally. Treasury yields are down to record lows. Haven assets remain in demand. We take a look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. The S&P is down 3.25%, down 101. The Nasdaq is down 3.3%, down 908, and the Nasdaq's down 2.8%, down 256. The 10-year is currently up 1.1%. The yield is 0.904%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 1.2% at 46.23 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 1.4% at 1665.90 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.34. The euro is currently at 112.05. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett. Now more Bloomberg Balance of Power with David Weston right here
and Tim,
on
and there's
Bloomberg
something
Radio.
that parses right over.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Medicine and science necessarily drive the push to address the coronavirus, but law and regulation and policy are a short step behind. We welcome now an expert on global health law. He's Nicholas Diamond. He teaches at Georgetown Law School and also works at Avalene Health. That's a health policy firm. He comes to us today from Washington. So thank you so much for joining us. Give us a sense of what the issues we should be thinking about in the area of ethics, in the area of law, as we look at both testing, which we're trying to ramp up, and also treatment and ultimately perhaps a vaccine.
Right, of course. It's really important to pay attention to how the different layers of government are responding in this situation. So we've seen the WHO, for example, taking quick action on the global level. And then now here in the U.S., we're seeing both the federal government and individual states like California also taking significant steps.
Okay, so what should we be thinking about? If we're, for example, a pharmaceutical firm right now, feeling a lot of pressure, also opportunity potentially in the area of testing or the area of treatment or the area of vaccine, what should we be thinking about as possible risks? Because whenever you have something goes out, whether it's a test kit or whether it's a vaccine, some things are going to go wrong.
Sure. Well, on the vaccine development side, this is one that a number of different players have been focused on very intensely lately. And I think the senator said it best a moment ago that we don't really know how long it will take before we'll have a vaccine show up. We also know, for example, that the success rate for taking a vaccine from candidate stage to licensure is around 15 or 16%, which is not uncommon for other biological products too. So that suggests that we really need as many candidates to go into testing to increase the likelihood that we're going to have a vaccine in that hopefully 12 to 18-month time period.
As the Congress and the administration think about how to really move this forward as quickly as we can, should they be thinking about things like legislation that would limit liability? For example, if a test kit went wrong, you got a false positive or a false negative, or for that matter, a treatment went wrong, or ultimately if there is a vaccine goes wrong.
Yeah, to my mind, I don't think those liability issues are really at play here. And I say that simply just based on prior experience with other outbreaks. We didn't really see liabilities like that show up, for example, around H1N1. So I don't really see those being a big issue here, but I certainly can, understand the concern there, just given what we've heard a little bit about the test kits.
One of the questions about the testing is we just don't know. As we talked with the senator about, you heard with Senator Merkley, we just don't know how big the problem is. We don't know how many people really have coronavirus right now in the United States. Could be modest, could be an awful lot. We don't know. As a practical matter, how do we decide how many people should get tested? And by the way, how do we facilitate that? As the senator said, one of the problems is it costs a lot of money.
Right. Well, funding has certainly been a big issue. And then really in any outbreak situation like we have here, the real key is whether it's a vaccine or a test kit, you want to make sure the people who need those are able to receive them. So making sure the providers have availability of the test kits is, of course, very important. We'll have a similar issue once we do have a vaccine for coronavirus as well. So I think that access consideration really is the main thing that we should focus on.
Does our governmental structure potentially get in the way? Because we have obviously federal authorities, but then you have state authorities, you have local authorities, and it's not an integrated public health system by any stretch of the imagination. Does that get in the way here, or could it be a strength?
I actually see it as a strength. States are very often very well positioned to respond in situations like this. And of course, the federal government can take a strong role, as it has been in this situation. But generally, we see a good amount of coordination between those federal and state entities. And I think we're going to see more of that here. And those state and local entities also have significant emergency authorities that we're seeing California exercise that can be really, really important for quick response in situations like this.
Are there things not being done right now, from your point of view, that you think we should be focused on? I mean, we do have this legislation that's pending. The Senate's supposed to vote on it later this afternoon. House has already passed it, $7.8 billion. Do we need more money? Are there other things that we should be doing that we're not moving forward on, at least as fast as we should?
Right. Well, I'll leave it to the folks on the Hill to say how much funding is necessary, but I think it's definitely positive that we are seeing some movement there on the funding front. And I will say, when we compare this to prior outbreaks, I would say the global response has been incredibly coordinated and very rapid. And I think that is a very positive sign for the situation we have at the moment. And in the past, with other outbreaks, other types of coronaviruses even, we just haven't seen the level of response that we do see now. So I take that as a positive, and I think to the extent we can all stay coordinated moving forward, that's going to be our best bet from a public health response standpoint.
How different is this one, as far as we can tell, from others, such as SARS, for example, which, as I understand, was a coronavirus? How different is it? Do we know?
Yeah, it's hard to tell with a lot of specificity at the moment, but one of the things that's really different about coronavirus this time, or this particular type, COVID-19, is that it spread much more quickly than SARS did, as well as much more quickly than Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS, did within the recent past. So in that sense, it looks different. We saw a lot of cases very quickly with COVID-19. And so I think that's really a distinguishing factor, which is really, to my mind, further emphasizing the fact that we do need that global coordinated response here.
Okay, Nicholas, thank you so very much for your time today. That's
Absolutely.
Nicholas Diamond from Abilene Health. He's reporting today from Washington. Still ahead, bracing for turbulence. Airlines could see a $113 billion loss in revenue because of the coronavirus. How the industry is preparing, that's coming up ahead on Bloomberg Balance of Power, on Bloomberg Television, and on radio.
Tom Key.
Delayed at the dentist and now you're late for school pickup. You need a free now. Need to take the dog to the vet before lunch. Should have gotten a free now. Trying to get 4 kids and their baggage to the airport. Free now. Sometimes you can't get from A to B fast enough. Download the Free Now app today for quick pickups and reliable drivers, no matter the situation. Less hassle, more hustle with Free Now.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For first-class fitting.
Morning.
For 0% free credit with no deposit. For a nice surprise.
Ooh.
For bringing home a bargain. For heaven at long last. Carpet Right. For life. Up to 4 years interest-free credit. Minimum spend applies.
You could find a $5, a $10, a $20, or even a crisp $50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
This is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Television and Radio. I'm David Weston. Time now for the stock of the hour. American Airlines is dropping by more than 9% today, bringing its decline for the year to more than 40% as the industry contends with the impact of the coronavirus. Kaylee Lyons is here with more. So airlines are really getting hit hard, and American today in particular.
Yeah, American is one of the worst performers, but literally every single airline stock is down today. As a group, they're just under immense pressure. You had American specifically downgraded at Bank of America today. It also had its price target cut over at Bernstein, as well as the price target of a few U.S. carriers. The analyst over there saying it is impossible to handicap the outcomes of the spread of the coronavirus. Plus, just in the past 24 hours, you had United and JetBlue trimming their flights because of the reduced demand. You had Southwest cutting its revenue outlook, again, because of that reduced demand. Plus, you had the International Air Transport Association saying that the airlines could face a $113 billion hit in revenue from passengers that are declining. That would be a 19% drop from 2019. We haven't seen anything like that since the financial crisis. Actually, passenger demand could fall this year for the first time since 2009. So that is the picture that these airlines are facing. It's not pretty.
And by the way, it's also the suppliers to the airlines. We had Larry Culp from GE on yesterday. They just took their numbers down for profitability and free cash flow in the first quarter because of their services of airplanes and their spare parts, because they're not going to need as many because they're not flying airplanes as much.
Yeah, there are so many trickle-down effects from this. And of course, when you think about travel, people not traveling, that affects things like credit card stocks. You're getting fewer cross-border transactions. I mean, you could go on and on and on. And it's not just airlines as well. The entire travel complex is down today. The likes of cruise lines with that Carnival Princess cruise ship quarantined off the coast of California. You're seeing travel stocks like Expedia booking lower. It's really a broad-based travel sell-off because the fact of the matter is consumers are not eager to travel right now with the coronavirus spreading as it is.
It's that demand shock we more or less were expecting. We thought would hit travel maybe first. It doesn't mean that it's going to be limited to travel. How about the markets more generally? They're having a rough day today.
They are right now, the S&P 500 down by about 3%. I would say that move is shocking, but it really isn't, considering we have fluctuated dramatically in every single day this week. And this is actually the 7th time in the past 9 sessions the S&P has moved to the upper downside by more than 2%. So right now, obviously, the bear is more in control, but this is really a market that is struggling for direction here, trying to gauge just how hard the coronavirus is going to hit the corporate profit outlook, what central banks can do about it, what they are going to do about it. I mean, there's a lot going on here. Where you're seeing more decisive action is really in the Treasury market. The U.S. 10-year yield breached 90 basis points just a few moments ago. Right now, we're back at about 91 basis points, but still down 14 basis points just on the day, down more than a full percentage point so far in 2020. It is only March 5th. This is a really dramatic move.
No, it's really quite extraordinary. And as you suggest, Kaylee, it's hard to know whether it's because we know it's going to be bad, as we found out from Southwest, for example, today, they said it, or because we just don't know how bad it's going to be.
I think it's both and.
Yeah, exactly.
More and more companies are rolling out these warnings saying we are going to get hit hard, but a lot of them are limiting it to the first, maybe second quarter.
That's what GE did. They said we're talking about first quarter, we can't talk second.
Very few are saying this is what we see for the full year because it is this large unknown at this point.
Fascinating. Thank you so much to Kaylee Lyons for that rather grim report on the markets, actually. Coming up, Balance of Power continues on Bloomberg Radio. In our second hour, we're going to talk to Bloomberg's Sean Donnan, ahead of the jobs report. This is about his close-up interview with Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director. By the way, that is on the cover of Bloomberg Business Week. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Super luxury standard setter Aman Resorts is spinning off a second lifestyle hotel brand with more affordable rates. Affordable being relative, of course. Even at 30% cheaper, we're still talking about $1,000 a night. Aman's new brand will open in 2022 with 3 locations: Tokyo, Sveti Stefan Montenegro, and Al Ula, Saudi Arabia. Janu's target guest is the occasional very high spender. Think younger, tech-minted nouveau riche, for whom luxury is not about white glove service, but banging nightlife and midday meditation in the same 24-hour cycle, all amid amazing design. In other hotel news, Bernard Arnault is among a pack of potential bidders vying for London's Ritz Hotel. Europe's richest man, chairman of LVMH, is among about 13 interested parties allowed to undertake due diligence for the 5-star hotel. It's being sold by the Barclay brothers. The Ritz could fetch as much as $1 billion. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio. When you put together the puzzle that's today's business and political environment,
can you make a call given this swirl of data?
Is that already being reflected in the way that they're priced?
Make sure you have all the pieces.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction. Will he have to abide by a subpoena?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Stocks are tumbling as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. Treasury yields have sunk to record lows as haven assets remain in demand. S&P 500 index now down 3.4%. Wild swings piling up. The measure has notched 4% moves since its February record, and two other 3% drops in the most volatile stretch since the week after S&P Global Ratings cut the U.S. debt rating in 2011. Banks leading today's losses, among them J.P. Morgan Chase down 5.3%. Citigroup shares down 5%. Bank of America down 5.2%. Wells Fargo down now by 5.5%. Well, just how low can rates go? Mark Cabana is head of U.S. rate strategy at B of A Securities.
We don't think that we're going to be going to zero. We do think that the Fed is going to be easing more. We think that they're going to ease again in March and likely April. And we think that you want to be biased long duration here. There's probably further downside risk just as concerns continue to increase around coronavirus. And I don't think you want to fight it yet. We're sort of thinking, though, that 10s are going to stabilize somewhere. There will be real resistance in kind of the 80-ish basis point range, 50 to 80 if you're really pessimistic.
And right now we've got the 10-year down at 0.90% on the 10-year. S&P down 104 now, again a drop of 3.3%. The Dow down 938 points, down 3.5%. Nasdaq down 259 points. That is a drop of 2.9%. Gold up 1.8%, $16.66 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.1%, $46.26 a barrel. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. That makes it time for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. And here is Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are falling along with U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down 2.7%, and the S&P 500 is down 3.3%. Germany's Continental has fallen more than 14% in U.S. trading. The maker of tires and other auto parts forecast a third straight year of lower earnings. Continental cited the coronavirus outbreak and other economic headwinds. South Africa's Sasol has lost more than 13%. The oil and chemical producer lost its investment-grade bond rating from Moody's. The firm cited high debt and cost overruns at a chemical plant in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And Germany's ProSiebenSat.1 Media has dropped 8.9%. The broadcaster's e-commerce unit agreed to buy U.S.-based online dating company Meet Group. The all-cash deal is valued at $452 million. Meat Group shares, by the way, are down 8.7%. China's VIP Shop Holdings has climbed more than 16%. The online retailer's fourth quarter earnings and sales beat analysts' average estimates in the Bloomberg survey. VIP Shop said it sees the coronavirus only having a short-term effect on business. Charlie?
And we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, keeping track of those American depository receipts. Tough day for a lot of the airlines. Among them, Southwest Airlines down 4.5%. UAL, parent of United, down 9.9%. American Airlines Group down 11.7%. Delta down 8.2%. Recapping, stocks lower. S&P down 105, drop there of 3.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We're going to grow our trade relationship.
I know what's broken. I know how to fix it.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
We've got now a real crunch few days for Brexit.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
OPEC goes for a big production cut and doesn't wait for Russia. President Putin tells President Erdogan that Syria is not worth fighting about. And President Trump's chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, says the economy's in good shape and there's no cause for panic. From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. Markets have been nervously watching every move of the coronavirus, and that certainly includes today, while the IMF warns that things may be worse than we realize. But Larry Kudlow, head of President Trump's National Economic Council, says we may be overreacting. We welcome now Bloomberg trade guru Sean Donnan, who sat down with Mr. Kudlow for an extensive interview, which is the cover of Bloomberg Business Week out today. So, Sean, thanks so much. Congratulations on this interview. And one of the themes in your piece is, boy, optimism. You can describe Larry Kudlow as an optimist. Is he right to be so optimistic right now about the economy?
Well, that's absolutely the big question. It's no doubt that we are now looking at a serious economic event. I just came in here after reading a new piece of economic research out of economists at Allianz. They calculate that the impact on the global economy and lost exports each quarter is going to be roughly $320 billion. Just to put that in context, they put that at roughly equal to the annual losses in exports that you saw as a result of the U.S.-China tariffs and the trade war there. This is a big event, and how this White House manages it and responds to it is a huge question, not just for the U.S. economy, but also for this election year. And Larry Kudlow's right in the middle of it.
Well, and it raises the question, probably unanswerable, but still it's raised by your piece in my mind as I read it. Does Larry Kudlow say these things because he truly believes them? That is his point of view. Or is he trying to wish himself into success? The president certainly wants to hear what Larry Kudlow is saying, that this is not a big problem. The president doesn't want it to be a problem if he wants to get reelected. But do we think he's spinning, or do you think he really does believe it deep down inside?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 points there. One, it is his job to talk up the economy right now, and he's working for a president who has staked his reelection bid on a robust economy, on a story of a blue-collar jobs boom, and so on. There's no doubt that's part of his job. But Larry Kudlow has been an optimist for a long, long time, and there's something that's constitutional about this in Larry. He has gone through he went through some real personal troubles in the 1990s when, as a result of drug alcohol addiction, he saw his career crater, and he came out the other side, converted to Catholicism, but he also says he really embraced optimism at that point, and he will describe himself as a relentless optimist. Now, that sometimes clouds his judgment, I think. We know that in December 2007, just as the recession was really starting to take hold here in the United States, Larry Kudlow was up there saying, dismissing any fears of a recession. And he has a mixed track record, to say the least, in terms of predicting big economic events, and that is dogging him right now.
Well, and it raises the potentially politically important question question of whether this can be a great asset going into the political race ending in November, or whether it could actually be a danger for the president in the sense that if he overpromises and he says, really, this is not a fundamental problem, coronavirus is not really going to hurt the economy, and it turns out as we get into the second quarter, it is hurting us, whether then there might be a more violent reaction in the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, you're starting to hear down here in Washington, people talk about and ask the question of whether this might turn out to be Donald Trump's Katrina moment, a reference to George W. Bush and that hurricane and the famously bungled reaction to that. So, we don't know yet whether that's true. I think, the administration admits that there's going to be a negative impact from this. They were pushing the Federal Reserve to go ahead and cut aggressively in response to this. At the same time, though, they are trying to navigate the political messaging on this, and also, as we've heard from Larry, insist that the economy is strong and that they don't need to step in with any kind of emergency economic package. That's a really, really tricky balance to hold, and it's not clear how long they're going to be able to hold that, especially when on days like today, you see the market's really testing some amazing historic metrics.
And Sean, you really put your finger on it, at least from my point of view, which is it's one thing to overpredict or to get your predictions wrong. It's another thing to not act when action is required. And what we've seen for the president is we want more and more cuts. Even after the 50 basis point cut from the Fed this week, the president said that's not enough, we want more. At the same time, he and Larry Kudlow are saying we don't think we need fiscal intervention, when a lot of people I'm hearing from are saying we need at least some targeted fiscal intervention, for example, for small and medium-sized enterprises.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, no one thinks cutting interest rates is going to find a cure for coronavirus or for COVID-19. No one thinks, look, it may help areas of the economy, but interest rates were low beforehand. The real issue here is people not flying, supply chains that have frozen up. There's going to be a need for some real targeted help for things like airlines, tour groups, cruise lines, and some of those manufacturers who just can't get those parts from China. This is not a monetary policy problem. It's a bigger problem than that.
So, Sean, last unfair question, but since you got to spend some time with Larry Kudlow and wrote about it, is Larry Kudlow a mouthpiece repeating what he hears from the president, or he's actually affecting how the president looks at the world?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think there's a temptation see Larry just as a mouthpiece, but there's no doubt that behind the scenes in this White House, he has been a really important player in economic policy and in talking the president away from some big potential missteps on the economy. The China Phase 1 deal that the president signed in January, a lot of that belongs to Larry Kudlow. The fact that we don't have auto tariffs on European imports right now, a lot of that belongs to Larry Kudlow. The fact that President Trump didn't order an intervention in currency markets last summer when he was raging about the dollar and its strength, a lot of that goes down to Larry Kudlow. So he's there behind the scenes. He's someone the president listens to, but he also knows who's boss, and he also knows he has to sell his boss.
Which is why we all need to read your piece. Many thanks to Bloomberg's Sean Donnan. He has a great piece. That's the cover of Bloomberg Business Week just this week on Larry Kudlow. Coming up, there's no question but that oil has taken a hit from the coronavirus. And today, OPEC moved to do something about it. We talk OPEC with Manus Cranny, our colleague over in Vienna. That's coming up next on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Karen Moscow.
Several nations are negotiating to evacuate diplomats.
And Nathan Hager.
How are you advising clients to navigate the shifting headlines?
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Are we heading into correction territory, do you think?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace. learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
TuneIn's your destination for college basketball, and it's free.
Down the right side of the lane, jumper up and good.
This week, we have a must-hear game. North Carolina at Duke.
2 for the win! No, tapped up by more! And it is the buzzer! More Bank City!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Kimball right of the lane against the SU zone to Warren.
With college basketball on TuneIn, you can hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today.
Movies like Contagion and Outbreak, not to mention all the cell phone images from disease-stricken countries, have made Americans pandemic voyeurs.
Now, for the first time, we're facing the probability that we will not just be witnessing, we'll be experiencing. And then we'll find out, what is the mettle of Americans?
Catch this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A 1,000-point drop right now for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, down 3.7%, have been down 10,033 points. That was the low of the day just a couple of minutes ago. But again, the S&P now down by 112, drop now of 3.6%. Nasdaq down 283. That is a decline of 3.1%. 10-year, the yield there, 0.90%. Stocks are tumbling as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. Treasury yields fell to record lows as haven assets remain in demand. Gold up 1.9% now at $16.68 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.6%. Now at $46.02 a barrel. Stay with Bloomberg Radio right through the close. Also stay with us tonight as well to find out how Asian markets react to all of this selling. Will we see a follow through tonight? Again, recapping here, stocks lower, S&P slumping 112 points, down 3.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. From the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio. OPEC ministers met in Vienna today and decided to cut daily crude output by 1 million barrels a day in the second quarter in response to reduced demand because of the coronavirus. But they acted without waiting for the Russians to get on board for another 500,000 barrel cut, which raises some questions about whether the cut will stick. We welcome now Bloomberg anchor Manus Cranny, who is over in Vienna and has been there for the meetings. Manus, thank you so much for joining us. Give us a sense. This sounds like a very high-stakes game of poker being played between Saudi Arabia and Moscow.
David, it is indeed. I can tell you as we speak, there is a sidebar meeting, if you want to use that journalistic term, up at the Hyatt. Ministers are arriving. So we got the Saudis pitched up there. That's where they're resident. You've got the Emiratis turning up there. We've got other ministers. It seems as if there is a sort of stage 2 meeting taking place at the moment of OPEC members. You mentioned the numbers, 1,500,000 from non-OPEC members. So the Iranians arrived back here. I'm in one of the downtown hotels at the front door. The Iranians came back, Zanganeh, the Iranian minister for oil, and he said, look, the Russians have not outright rejected the plan, the banner headline that you read, 1.5 million barrels a day to be taken off the oil market. So they're not outright rejected it, but nor have they tacitly accepted it. So this is the horse trading. It's a high-risk, high-roll game. It looks as if the Saudis and the rest of the GCC and OPEC have employed. Put pressure on the Russians to come and do deal. History's not great when it comes to reviewing that kind of a scenario. So we've got this sidebar, stage 2, off the beaten track, OPEC meeting taking place this evening. Let's see what comes out of that. David, risk is this. Risk is the Russians don't come on board for the full Monty that they need. What is your risk? Your risk is there's a bust-up, a breakup, and maybe the Saudis pull the ripcord on the whole thing, and it leaves OPEC having to do all the job on their own. But that is a worst-case scenario. That is not the base case in downtown Schnitzel, Vienna.
Yeah, Schnitzel's awful good over there. I recommend it. But and this is all against the backdrop, obviously, of something of a demand shock around the world from the coronavirus.
Yes.
But I wonder, you followed, Manus, these things so carefully for so many years. Would the Saudis, with the other members of OPEC, have gone ahead with this if they didn't have at least some indication from the Russians that they would likely step up to the plate?
David, I'm sort of with you in that consciousness of, wow, why would you make a headline like this if you weren't sort of like a slight indication from Novak on the line or in the back channels that they would come on board? This is a huge, just think, David, over the history of time of oil markets. You know, the OPEC and the history of OPEC is littered with huge decisions under the Al-Naimi regime to pump at will, which caused a cascade lower in prices. David, I think this is one of those high bar strategies that they're employing. Why are we having sidebar meetings this evening? Is there a plan B? I leave you with this thought because I know time is precious. Zanganeh, who's got perhaps a little bit less to lose by making comments, says, well, if the deal doesn't come off, there is no plan B. And I think, Mr. Weston, tonight, plan B is being created as we speak.
Fascinating. Thank goodness that you're over there to cover that plan B. But finally here, Manus, give us a sense of the dynamics from Vladimir Putin's point of view, because he'd already said he doesn't like much the cuts that are in place right now. He doesn't want to extend them beyond where they are. Now they're going to take them further. What's the situation with his economy? Because ultimately this does come down to rubles or dollars or yen.
It does. Look, if you look at it from the pure fiscal point of view, which is the jumping off point for Bloomberg, $42, $43 break even is your Russian break even. The oil companies in Russia perhaps are one's less able to control those than one is in Saudi. So fiscal break even $43 in Russia. Fiscal break even in Saudi Arabia up in the 80s. I'm rounding aggressively here, so forgive me. But that just shows you the polemics, which is how high the bar is for the Saudis and how low the bar is for the Russians. They've got to meet in the middle. But, David, there is the, geopolitics at play as well. Saudi-Russia axis of power plays into these negotiations. These negotiations are Mohammed bin Salman at the upper level within Saudi and at the Putin-esque level in Russia. And really, if there's a meeting of minds in the geopolitics, then the horse trading, almost gets anointed, doesn't it? That sort of seems to be the way. So that's my take on it, for what it's worth.
Well,
that's
worth
the Bloomberg take.
Manus, it's worth so terribly much, but when you talk about a fiscal break-even for Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince of up in the 80s, that suggests he has a fair amount of pressure on him to get the oil price up to actually meet his budget.
Absolutely. Which I think almost detracts from the argument. I'm in where I am, David. I'm in the Hyatt. They've got a pool of reporters here, and so there's a lot of chat about would the Saudis really pull the ripcord on the OPEC Plus alliance, this strategic alliance created in 2016 to facilitate a flooring of the market. Would they really walk away from that? My sense is yes. Having lived in the region for 2-3 years now, having been there over 30 years, yes. Yes, I get the sense the Saudis, if they needed to exact a presence and power, would indeed do that. Relative to what goes on in Russia, I don't think it's going to break up. I don't think they're going to bust up. I don't think it's going to be this sort of dating relationship that's going to come to a tragic end, David. Yeah. But maybe I've been proven very wrong on many occasions.
Well, maybe so, Manus, but I must say you are proof once again of there's no substitute for a good reporter on the ground. So it is really great that we have you over there. That's Bloomberg anchor. He's Manus Cranny, of course. Coming up, it's back. The Equal Rights Amendment, that is. We talk with Linda Coverley of Winston & Strawn about the revival of a possible change to the Constitution that's been around for about 50 years now. That's coming up on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks continue to drop on coronavirus concerns. The Dow was falling 950 points, or 3.5%. S&P down 104 points. NASDAQ falling 265. Coronavirus fears have hit airline stocks pretty hard in the past couple of weeks. Now it looks like those fears are starting to hit the airlines themselves.
Southwest says it's seen a swift drop in demand and rising cancellations. And United Airlines and JetBlue say they're cutting flights from their schedules. Mortgage rates are dropping to record lows. Freddie Mac says a 30-year fixed-rate loan is now down to 3.29%, the lowest ever. And on the labor front, the government reports jobless claims dropped by 3,000 last week to 216,000, indicating a strong job market. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. The Bloomberg Business of Sports podcast.
How did the Yankees become this mega valuable team?
Where the money is flowing inside sports around the globe.
From the marketing perspective, where are the dollars spent?
From union heads to team owners, Scott Soshnick and Michael Barr speak to the names that power this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Boston Red Sox CEO Sam Kennedy.
National Hockey League Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Bloomberg Business of Sports. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at we actually plan out what they look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
We go there.
About export numbers because quite shocking. We saw Singapore, Japan too.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, some people thought it was dead, but the Equal Rights Amendment is back on the national agenda. We're joined by my colleague June Grasso.
101 right now. That is a drop of 3.2%, now 3,028. Fast-moving markets. Got to stay Bloomberg right through the close to see where things end up. Also, of course, our Asian market coverage will continue well into the night. The Dow down 903 right now, have been down more than 1,000 at the last check. Right now, the Dow is down by 3.4%. NASDAQ slumping 249 points, down 2.77%. And look at the 10-year, the yield there, 0.91%. Stocks are tumbling as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. S&P 500 index erasing the majority of yesterday's steep gains as wild swings pile up. The benchmark has had the most volatile week since S&P Global Ratings cut the U.S. debt rating back in 2011. And of course, we have got a jobs report tomorrow. Today, we got numbers on jobless claims. They dipped last week, underscoring America's steady labor market. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
We're still running at some of the lowest levels since the 1960s and 1970s. Jobless claims dropped by 3,000 last week to 216,000. So far this year, there's no sign of a hit to the data from the coronavirus. That said, some sectors of the economy are under stress. Supply chain and travel, for example. Friday, the government issues its monthly employment report, and economists are forecasting a February gain of 175,000 jobs, a respectable gain. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
We've got gold up 1.9% right now, $16.67 the ounce. So Texas Intermediate crude down 1.3%, $46.18 a barrel. Tough day for a lot of the airline stocks. Southwest Airlines down 4.2%, UAL down 9.9%, American Airlines down 11.3%, Delta slumping 7.4%. If you're traveling, you might be using a credit card. We've got American Express down 3.3%, and among some of the bank names today, JP Morgan Chase down 4.9%, Citigroup down 4.8%, Bank of America down by 5%. Recapping, equities selling off, coronavirus fears rocking markets again. S&P down 96, a drop there of 3.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. It's the Thursday edition. Here he is, David Weston.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. It was 1972 when the Equal Rights Amendment that bars discrimination based on sex was first proposed, but after an initial surge in states ratifying it, things died away, and a deadline passed by Congress came and went. But then recently, states like Nevada and Illinois decided to take it back up, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi moved a resolution to suspend the deadline.
With this resolution, we take a giant step toward equality for women, progress for families, and a stronger America, because we know that when women succeed, America succeeds.
We welcome now my colleague June Grasso and Linda Coberly. She's managing partner at Winston & Strawn. So, Linda, thanks so much for joining us. Set the scene for us. And I'll confess to my age. I was around. I was in law school. No, undergraduate. When the Rights Amendment was first proposed. I was around for all the ratification attempts. Set the stage, though. What went wrong here? How many states did they need? How close did they come?
Well, they got 3 states from the threshold set in the Constitution. So 35 states voted to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in the 1970s. And under Article 5 of the Constitution, the requirement is 3/4 of the states, which is 38. So the Equal Rights Amendment fell 3 states short.
So why is it now that we have like Nevada and people like that saying, oh, what about that Equal Rights Amendment? Let's come back and take another look at it. Why now?
Well, something happened in between the 70s and today that really changed the discussion about amending the Constitution, that was the ratification of our most recent amendment to the Constitution, which is about congressional pay. It was proposed by James Madison. Yes, that James Madison. And it took 203 years to ratify.
No deadline there, right.
No deadline there, but Congress recognized that an amendment can take a long time and is valid once it's ratified by 3/4 of the states, which is what the Constitution itself said. So that gave rise to a new strategy of what's been called the three-state strategy, which is, what if we just finish the project? What if we just get the 3 remaining ratifications, and then Congress can deal with the time limit that it imposed in 1972? Or there can be litigation over that time limit, and we can see whether a time limit like the one imposed by Congress here could ever really be effective to stand in the way of an amendment that is ratified consistent with Article 5 of the Constitution.
I remember a few years ago, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was at the Aspen Ideas Festival, I think it was, and she was talking about how important the Equal Rights Amendment was and how she wanted her grandchild someday to open up a book of the Constitution and see it there. But then a few weeks ago, she said that she thinks that we should start all over again with the Equal Rights Amendment from the ground up, so that there wouldn't be this, problem of clarification. Has she hurt the movement at all? Because I know that Republicans on the floor during the debate over the extension of the Equal Rights Amendment were quoting Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes, and I'm interested to see Republicans quoting Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm not sure that's something that has been happening a lot in the past. It's kind of funny to see her be a hero of that group in Congress today. I don't think she was talking about the legal issues. I think she was talking about the strategic issues, and she's made these comments before. It's hard to think of anyone who has been a bigger supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment over the years than Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And in fact, in the interview that you're referring to a couple of weeks ago, she underscored that even for people who think this is really a symbolic effort, that women already have lots of the protections they need, and so the Equal Rights Amendment would be largely symbolic, it's a really important symbol, and she's been very clear about that. I think the question she was being asked in that interview was about political strategy, and she recognized, and this is not I can't disagree with her perspective, that it's unfortunate that there's controversy over whether the Equal Rights Amendment as proposed in 1972 would be valid, and she points out the arrival of states that ratified after the time limit apparently expired, and that there's controversy about that. And so I think the point she was making was a political point, a point about strategy and advocacy, and not a legal point about how she would rule in a case if the removal of the time limit, for example, were ever presented before her as a judge.
How important are the cases by Virginia and some of the other states that ratified afterward against the archivist of the United States to get him to put it on the books?
Well, I think it's a very important development, and it shows the interest of states themselves in making sure that the constitutional process for amendment is followed. So there is this lawsuit that was brought by the attorneys general of Virginia, Nevada, and Illinois, where I'm from, and that lawsuit seeks to declare the time limit ineffective to stop a duly ratified amendment. You're right to point to the archivist. The archivist of the National Archives is the person who's charged by Congress to actually kind of sign the paper that says, let's put this in the Constitution. And it makes sense to have someone administratively who has to have that role, just because somehow the thing's got to get into your pocket Constitution that you can buy in the store or on Amazon. But the role of the archivist doesn't actually have any constitutional significance. Under the Constitution itself, an amendment becomes effective as soon as the 38th state ratifies, and that's what the position. That's the position that those 3 states are taking in their lawsuit.
Okay, this is the point in the interview where I have a question that we don't have time to answer. So, Linda, I hope you'll come back with June and talk about this. And I raise this with some hesitation as the only male in the conversation, but we do have sex discrimination in the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, as interpreted appointed by the Burger Court. There is a higher standard. It's not strict scrutiny, but there is compelling state interest in there. So let's come back and talk about why we need the amendment, not whether we'll get it. So many thanks now to my colleague June Grasso and to Linda Coberly of Winston & Strawn. Coming up, equity markets are taking another big step down today, and the U.S. 10-year yield dipped below 90 basis points at one point. We're going to talk with Bloomberg cross-asset reporter Vildana Heinrich. That's coming up next on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
You could find a £5, a £10, a £20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End, and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
The Big B&Q 20% off bathroom event is now on. We've huge savings on a range of toilets, basins, baths and furniture. So you can get a great deal on the style that suits you. But hurry, 20% off ends Monday. You can do it when you B&Q it. Offer ends 9th of March. Subject to availability, see DIY.com.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour, the biographer of Michael Bloomberg gives us a peek at the man behind the billions.
I've often thought that one of the reasons he was so stiff as a speaker was that he was trying to resist saying some really smart-ass remarks. And
Eleanor Randolph on Michael Bloomberg. Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. Steep losses again for the U.S. stock market. Stocks are tumbling as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. S&P 500 index down now by 3%, erasing the majority of yesterday's steep gains. Wild swings continue to pile up. The Dow is down 868 points, a drop now of 3.2%, have been down by about 1,000 points. NASDAQ down 231. That is a drop of 2.6%. Again, the 10-year yield 0.92%. Gold up 1.9%. 16.67 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate oil down 1.3%, 46.10 a barrel. Recapping, stocks lower. S&P 500 index down 95, a drop of 3%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellett. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. The Dow and the S&P are off more than 3% today so far, and bond yields touch new lows as well, with the 10-year at one point falling actually below 90 basis points, although it's back up over that now. Here to help us understand what is going on is Vildana Heinrich. She covers cross-asset for Bloomberg, and thank you so much for scurrying in here on a fairly active markets day. So, Vildana, what can you tell us? What are you hearing out there about why this is?
Well, investor confidence has really been shaken by the ongoing virus concerns. Every time we see a new headline of cases increasing around the globe, it seems to shake confidence even more. And in terms of volatility, what you were just mentioning, just to give us a sense of what we've been seeing, over the last 8 trading days, 3 have seen the S&P close up or down 4%. Wow. And 3, excluding today, have seen the S&P move 3% or more.
And part of the issue, I think, going back to the political side of it, is we don't even have the test kits out there yet. So it's hard for investors to know how big the breadbox is, how bad this is. It could be not so bad. It could be much worse. But we're sort of flying blind, all of us, in particular investors right now. We don't know what's around the corner.
That's exactly right. In speaking with investors, that's what everybody has been telling me today. We're seeing this volatility. We're seeing stocks move up and down. You're seeing these crazy trading days. In terms of fundamentals, we're getting some economic data that is maybe holding up better than expected, but it doesn't encompass any of the virus impacts. So investors really don't know how to game this out, how to price out a recession or whatever the worst case scenarios, really.
Well, exactly. One of the issues is we're getting economic data. We got ISMs earlier. We got jobless claims today. We're going to get job numbers tomorrow. But every one of these has an asterisk saying, yeah, but this doesn't really take into account the coronavirus. So it's not even as if tomorrow we get the jobs numbers, we'll know that much more.
Exactly. And so in the past, maybe what investors are saying is, if we had maybe before the virus seen a really hot number, maybe there would have been chatter about the Fed even raising rates this year. And it's like the conversation has changed so incredibly much. And yeah, that asterisk, it's there. And it'll be weeks before we can start to encompass some of the virus data.
And for policymakers, we saw, I think, some of this week. We had the Fed with their emergency 50 basis point rate cut. The markets actually went down because to some extent it's not clear when they do something like that. Maybe the Fed knows something we don't know because all of us don't know that much. So we're really clutching at straws. Any indication, does somebody know something about this? It's not clear they do.
Right. There's 2 thoughts here from what I'm hearing from investors. One is that the Fed is really close with the business community. They're talking to company executives and maybe they're getting a sense that things are worse than previously thought. And the other sense is that the Beige Book came out yesterday and they must have seen a copy of it beforehand. So they knew what was going to be there. They knew what company executives are saying. And maybe that's why they know something that the rest of us are still grappling to get a sense of.
So as you talk to investors, I mean, where is safety? Where's home base here? If you're in this world that's so uncertain, where do you turn? What do you look at?
That's so tricky to answer as well, because even gold, last week we saw it selling off at the end of the week, typically thought of as a safe haven. Obviously, people are rushing into treasuries. And even then, the conversation having with people is, at what point do treasury yields tell us that they've fallen so far that they're actually pricing in a recession? And at what point does that become even more concerning for the equities markets?
And as you look at the equities markets, are there some sectors being hit worse than others? For example, I'll mention airlines today, because they had the IATA, the IATA numbers come out, say they're going to lose $113 billion was the number, I think. We also had Southwest come out and say it's going to be, they're going to take a hit on the revenue. We all expect airlines to take a hit because people are not flying very much anymore. Are there certain sectors that are particularly being hit right now?
Definitely. And in terms of that airlines number, one of the main takeaways that I took from it is that it was the second time that they were revising that number, which means that even the revisions that we're getting, we could see them continue to get revised lower in the coming weeks as the impacts get felt more and more.
Yeah, once again, we don't know where bottom is. At the same time, banks are having a particularly hard time right now. Obviously, when you get the interest rates down this low, it's not good news, particularly for the big banks.
Right, exactly.
So banking is getting hit out. And there are sectors that are doing better or worse than we might have expected. Any places that are doing a little better?
In terms of better, I mean, you'll see some of the more bond proxy, safer haven, utilities, real estate. But at the same time, energy is getting hit tremendously because demand is falling. Obviously, we're hearing from a lot of the oil producers and the meetings that we're seeing coming out of Vienna. But still, demand is expected to go down. That's why you're seeing energy selling off almost 5% today.
But even with the OPEC meetings in Vienna, okay, great, they agreed to cut their production by 1 million barrels a day. But they didn't have Russia in the deal, and that's another 500,000. And they've said if Russia doesn't join, then they'll come back off the deal. So even there, that meeting and that decision didn't give much certainty to the marketplace.
One interesting theory I heard is that maybe Russia is looking to surprise us in a very positive way. So they're not promising yet, and then they'll come out and they'll also get behind the cuts, and that might be a sort of good surprise. But we'll see. That's
you know that Vladimir Putin, he likes to have nice upside surprises for the world, right?
Definitely.
It's interesting when we're to the point of saying Vladimir Putin may bail us out here by surprising on the upside.
Yeah, it is an interesting theory.
It's a theory, at least. That's exactly right. Okay, so thank you so much to Vildana Heinrich. Really appreciate your scurrying in here on a really active markets day, not necessarily in a good way. Thank you so much. And now it's that magic time of the day where we find out what's going on Bloomberg Business Week. I assume you're going to turn this all around for us, Jason.
Absolutely. Nothing to worry about here, David. Yeah, it's been amazing, listening to Vildana's really nice recitation of what's going on. And, investors really worried that they just can't quite get their arms around it. We're going to talk about this 10-year and, where it is.
Below 90 basis points at one point. I mean,
Unbelievable. So we're going to unpack that. We're actually going to hear later in the afternoon from Dallas Fed President Rob Kaplan, Kathleen Hayes out there talking to him. We're going to talk about this to the CEO of ZipRecruiter to get a preview of Jobs Day tomorrow. And Stephen Seelig is going to be along. You probably know him from sort of Wall Street and Washington days. He advised President Obama in the Commerce Department, but also a big deal maker at B of A back in the day.
Yeah, very smart guy, actually. A good guy to have on. So it's going to be pretty tumultuous, but it's all going to be about markets right at the moment.
Absolutely.
And part of the problem we were talking I talked about it on the first hour of Balance of Power is we don't have the test kits yet.
Right.
I mean, we don't even know how many people have it.
Right.
And without the test kits, without knowing it, how can you make any decisions at all? We don't know.
And we do see, sort of headlines moving and, from a very parochial perspective, you and I both live in Westchester. Yep. We know about these cases that are up there, and you start to wonder about the infrastructure, even just here in New York City, of people moving around. There's no discernible public impact, it feels like, as you move around New York and its environs, but then you start to read all these headlines about what's going on in Italy, what's going on in other countries, and you just wonder what's going to happen next.
And not even necessarily headlines. This is where social media can really have a negative effect. I spent part of my morning with texts about what's closed, what's not closed, and somebody else's friend is in, and are they under quarantine, are they not under quarantine, and you have to work from home. A lot of misinformation, frankly, a lot of concerned people, a lot of rumors going around, and this is where the fake news thing really bites us, because we don't know what to believe.
And we are are, definitely seeing big organizations make different decisions. Yep. We're going to catch up with Lucas Shaw about South by Southwest. Obviously, a lot of people pulling out of that. So you're starting to see some real impact. So an exciting afternoon, to say the least.
Yeah, I should say. And fortunately, we have Jason Kelly and Carol Massey here to bring it to us on Bloomberg Business Week. That does it for Balance of Power for today. I'm David Weston, and you're listening to Bloomberg Radio.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For something for everyone. Carpet Right. For life.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £21.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband Switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
You could find a fiver, a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massey and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, streaming on YouTube. Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Thursday. Feels like Friday, but it ain't yet. Thursday, March 5th, 2020. Carol Massey along with my co-host Jason Kelly. Another day, the same theme. Jason, we're talking about markets, we're talking about the coronavirus, and we're talking about volatility.
Absolutely. I mean, the volatility, we just haven't seen this level of back and forth in a while, and I'm interested to get into this with some of our market guests for some historical perspective, because we do have some historic things happening in the markets.
All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get a check, though, on the day's trading session. Let's check on in with Charlie Millett.
Thank you very much. Thursday it is. Feels to me like Tuesday. We have got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all selling off again. Stocks tumbling as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. Let's get right to the numbers. S&P down 100 points, a drop right now of 3.2%. The Dow down 894 points, down 3.3%. NASDAQ down 245, a drop there of 2.7%. We've got more coming up in just a moment with our Dave Wilson and Mike Regan. The 10-year, the yield 0.92%. Gold up 1.9%. 16.68 the ounce right now. Gold, crude, another pullback there, down 1.4% at 46.15. Briefly, just want to mention some of the airline names today. Travel stocks, as you might expect, being hit hard again today. UAL down 9.5%, American down 10.3%, Delta down 6.4%, and Southwest lower today by 3.9%. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Coming up, we're going to take you a little deeper into the bond world, the rates world, to understand how it's playing on that side of the market. It's a massive market, an important one, and it goes right to should you refinance your house? I mean, all those issues come to play, and of course, the Fed plays a huge role in all
and we're going to hear from Dallas Fed President Robert Kaplan, or Kathleen Hayes, going to sit down in a very timely conversation with the Dallas Fed President. And kind of building on that theme, talk about timely conversations. Our Sean Donnan caught up with the President's Chief Economic Advisor, Larry Kudlow. He is the ultimate optimist. And the question is, at this time, might that thinking and that outlook be a problem in today's environment?
Well, and we can't forget, speaking of Larry Kudlow and economic indicators and all of those things, tomorrow it's Jobs Day.
That's right.
We're going to get a preview of that from the CEO of ZipRecruiter, Ian Siegel. He's going to join us later. Also might talk a little jobs and trade with Stefan Seelig. He's going to be along as well. So a packed show ahead.
Yeah, lots going on. Let's set the Business Week agenda. Mike Regan is senior editor and lead blogger at Bloomberg Markets Live blog. He's in our Interactive Broker studio along with Dave Wilson, our stocks editor. So, Dave, let's start with you. We're bouncing along the bottom right now, but we're down a lot.
We are. I mean, it's been big up, big down, big up, big down. That's the story of the week. And, you know, depending on how you want to look at volatility, this is either the worst stretch we've seen since 2011, or if you just look at it on a day-to-day move in the S&P 500, since 2008. I mean, we're talking bear market level volatility here. It just goes to show you.
But we haven't hit a bear market yet.
No, but what's interesting, I got to point out props to my colleague on the broadcast markets desk, Abigail Doolittle, for pointing out the Dow Jones Transportation average is down about 20% from its peak in mid-January. So it's flirting with a bear market at this point, given the declines we're seeing across the industry.
Well, Mike, how important is that as an indicator? We watch the transports because it's a great indication of how things are moving around in this economy, but talk to us about what you're seeing and how that fits into it.
Well, obviously, yeah, I mean, transportation, travel, and leisure is right at the middle of the target of this whole sell-off that we've seen. And I'll give you one, Dave. The XLA NYSE airline index is down about 32%, so well into a bear market. I mean, look, banks are in a bear market since the end of the year. Auto companies are, energy companies are. There's a lot of sectors within the market that are down more than 20%. I mean, it's kind of those defensives that are holding us afloat somewhat. They're all still down today, but your real estate, your utilities, that sort of thing. But it's just.
Well, if they fall into a bear market, does it mean the rest of the market is going to follow?
Well, I think the tech is obviously the biggest weight in the index, so we'll see how they perform. But to Dave's point about that volatility, I mean, we saw this massive rally yesterday, and in the middle of all the selling, you see these massive bounce back rallies. But back to Dave's point, that's also very similar to what you see in episodes like 2011 when the U.S. lost its AAA credit rating from S&P. That was a major market storm at that point. And during the financial crisis, you would see these big up days. So it's mixed in with really nasty down days. You often see those big up days, and it can be sort of disheartening because you see a real pop and you think, okay, the worst is over, we're going to rebound here. But no, it's just, I think it's an effect of just how complicated our markets are, how there's a lot of computerized trading that sort of is based on different signals in the market, and one day they might decide to get in for a quick trade, the next day they're out, and it's a very unsettled market that. Yeah. But if you look at the underlying, story behind it all, there's economic damage being done. There's a lot more to come. So it's hard to really take much solace from any rebound we see like yesterday.
And the question I feel like is it just one quarter? Is it 2 quarters? Is it something that turns into a recession that maybe sticks around for a little bit longer?
I mean, those are the sort of issues that people are having to work through right now because, some companies, they figure it's here and it's gone. Others, they just can't even give you a sense of how much the coronavirus is going to hurt their business. And you mentioned the banks, Mike. I mean, they are taking a beating today. Bank of America, Citigroup, JP Morgan Chase, all down 5%. Wells Fargo down 6%. I mean, those are some pretty nasty
So at the bottom
moves.
of the pack if you look at those S&P 500 major industry groups.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when I try and figure out how is this, playing through for consumers and whatnot. I mean, look at, and Charlie mentioned the airlines, look at airfares right now. Joe Weisenthal just tweeted, you can literally fly round trip right now from New York City to Miami for $51.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll see you later, Jason. I'm out of here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is sort of amazing, sort of how this is all playing through. And I don't think we have seen even close to the last of. I'm not even sure, the perennial what inning will be in.
That's not going to be a profitable fare for that airline,
No,
obviously,
no.
And it's still going to be a half-empty plane, probably.
Right.
So it's a major damage being done.
I also think about those companies that are either over-leveraged at this point, the more vulnerable companies, just like we talked about in China. I think this could be, depending on how long this goes on, could be really difficult for some of those companies.
Yeah,
well, sure.
Absolutely. You look at Flybe in the UK, collapsed overnight. Look at some of the credit default swaps, believe it or not, are back in the news again. Look at Caribbean Cruises, Royal Caribbean. Their credit default swaps are really skyrocketing. So it's a scary time.
Anything else you want to leave us with, Dave? We'll look forward to having you for the chart of the stock of the day, but give us a tease.
Well, I mean, it's just something what the falling stock prices in the past few weeks have done to dividend yields and how they compare now, even within the S&P 500, with the yields on junk bonds, high yield debt. That's where we're going.
All right.
I mean, that's pretty telling. I was looking at your tie. Sorry, I was a little obsessed. It's all like watch faces, right? Or clock
Salvador
faces.
Dali's
Salvador
The Persistence of Memory. And that's what gets you when you see a market move like this. Your memory goes back to times like 2008
and
when
it
the markets
starts to
were
melt
falling.
as they do.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's just, we're going to have to wait. It's just time will tell, how severe this really gets.
Right. Dave's ties always tell a story.
They do. It's not always a happy one. All right, Dave Wilson, we'll see you in a bit for your chart and stock of the day, as we mentioned. Mike Regan, thank you so much, senior editor and lead blogger. And for some more context from Mike and Peter Coy, check out our weekend show. We just taped that today. That'll be rolling out over the weekend. Let's do the Bloomberg Business Week bite of the day. Now it's one number that tells us a lot. Carol, today's number, 30,000.
Nice round number. Concerns over the coronavirus are putting an end to some of the biggest business conferences of the year. IBM is the latest to cancel its main annual event, which was scheduled to draw some 30,000 people to San Francisco in May. IBM saying yesterday it will instead stream video and other online content in place of the in-person convention for IBM Think 2020. So, I do wonder how many people, as a result of what's happening, and they're like, oh, we can stream this, how much of that sticks around going forward?
It's a great point. It's a great point, whether people do start to
Change
think about these big conferences especially. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Let's get a check on world national headlines from Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you. Elizabeth Warren ended her presidential campaign bowing to the reality that the race for the Democratic nomination has become a two-way battle between former Vice President Joe Biden and U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. Warren made the announcement along with her husband outside her home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and also said she is not upset about placing third in her state on Super Tuesday. Still, she is disappointed that a woman will still not be elected president.
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those baby promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spent much of her weekly press conference today talking about her wish to see a woman in the White House.
I so wish, every time I get introduced as the most powerful woman member, I almost cry because I wish that were not true. I so wish that we had a woman president of the United States, and we came very close to doing that, a woman who was better qualified than so many people have sought that office and even won it.
Scrambling to keep the coronavirus at bay, officials ordered a cruise ship with about 3,500 people aboard to hold off the California coast today until passengers and crew can be tested. This after a traveler from its previous voyage died and at least one other became infected. A Coast Guard helicopter is expected to deliver test kits to the Grand Princess once it reaches the waters off San Francisco later in the day. Princess Cruise Lines said fewer than 100 of those aboard had been identified for testing. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow enjoy each other's company.
Most of us don't speak Mandarin. John, do you speak Mandarin?
I do not speak Mandarin.
I just wanted to check that.
Almost as much as they enjoy grilling economic experts.
When this is over, do you bounce back or is there a lasting weakness to it?
Which means that you will enjoy listening.
If things get worse, we're ready to do more.
Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad.
Mother's Day is coming up, so head to your local Asda in London. We've got a bottle of Mum Champagne. Was £33, now just £20. Thoughtful gifts, unforgettable prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Drink aware, 75 centilitres.
Petrol, cashback, sat-nav, cashback, food shop, rucksack, aubergine and pasta, white wine, cashback, treadmill, cashback, flowers for the family, dressing gowns, cup of tea and movie night, cashback, chopping board, cashback, parmigiano, reggiano, cashback. Anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Get cashback on whatever you buy with no annual fee. Only with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
Incredible. This piece is my favourite.
Stunning. I can't look away.
Who's the artist?
It's clearly a Costa.
Oh, look, there's the artist now. What do you call this masterpiece?
We call it our velvety smooth flat white.
Crafted with the world's best beans and finished with a floret hand-drawn by expert baristas, the flat white at Costa Coffee really is a work of art. Visit the nation's favourite coffee shop and enjoy one today. The question, what is your favourite branded coffee shop, was asked. See costa.co.uk for full details.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in borough market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong? No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For something for everyone. Carpet Right. For life.
You could find a fiver, a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
all new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic, and because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
Lines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. A 934-point drop right now for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, down 3.5%, 26,157 on the Dow. Stocks tumbling again as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to rattle financial markets. We've got the S&P 500 index lower now by 102 points. That is a drop of 3.3%. The NASDAQ Composite Index down 257 points. For NASDAQ, that is a drop right now of 2.9%. The 10-year yield, 0.92%. Gold rallying up 1.9% now at $16.68 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 1.3%, $46.20 a barrel on WTI. So again, recapping a Thursday sell-off, sharp contrast to yesterday. S&P down 105, a drop now of 3.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, safe to say the U.S. Treasury market has been signaling for some time that something isn't quite right. Today, the 10-year yield dipping below 0.9%. This in a week when the Fed cut rates half a point. That was an emergency move. That happened on Tuesday. All of this happening amid and really helping to cause a wild ride in the equity markets. Two angles on today's volatile market environment that we want to talk about. One is on what it really means for your mortgage, because mortgage rates are now at record lows. Another on whether or not you should be buying the dip. Claire Boston is in our Interactive Broker studio right here in New York. She's credit reporter at Bloomberg News. Liz Capel-McCormick on the phone from New Jersey. She is bond and FX reporter at Bloomberg News. Liz, I want to start with you. I mean, the mortgage market, and also just the yield environment here in the U.S. I mean, this is moving to levels that reminds me of the financial crisis.
Right, like someone said earlier to me today, it's like they're in meltdown mode, the market. It's just, you can't keep up with keeping the list of all the records, right? Like you said, record low 30-year mortgage rate, 10-year treasury yield went to a new record low. It's just spiraling, everything.
So tell us about the territory that we're in now, specifically when it comes to the 10-year, because I feel like, we sort of throw it around in the newsroom a little bit, but for a more average person like myself, help us understand the significance here.
Right. Well, that's an important thing, is that we were trying to look at that is what does it really mean besides this, the neat number to know? It's, for the bond market, it's really about, because it's a long-term rate, it's really an outlook on what people think about the U.S. economy, which had been chugging along, even while growth is slowing abroad. But with the virus, unfortunately, as you've been discussing, there's so many headwinds to growth that are coming, and obviously the Fed jumped in this week to cut rates to try to help, but people really think it's it's not going to be enough, and they're kind of signaling a slowdown. Inflation expectations are falling. That just the outlook for growth does not look good by a long stretch.
I'm just going to point out there's nothing average about Jason Kelly. I'm just going to say that. All right. So listen, so what the Fed did, right, there's been so many discussions that, if it's a financial crisis, then you want the Fed to cut rates, Claire, because then you increase some liquidity in the market. But this also has to do with, is this a supply-driven, crisis? Is this a demand-driven crisis? I do wonder, lower rates here in the mortgage market, and your story says they could go even lower. Will people feel confident enough to go out and take advantage of it? But first of all, tell us what's going on in the mortgage market.
Right. So today we hit a all-time record low in mortgages. The average rate for a 30-year conventional loan is now 3.29%.
Wow.
Yes. So if you want to refinance, perhaps now is a good time to do that. The interesting thing about the mortgage market is you have to think of the refinancing customer and then the new home customer separately. So if you want to refinance, chances are you really just care about that rate. It doesn't really matter what's going on in the broader economic universe. But there is a big question about whether or not we could see new home sales maybe take a little bit of a hit if customers get really worried about what's going on.
That's a really, really important point, because I feel like, those of us who own homes, you're exactly right. You just think, well, I'm going to be in my house for a while anyway. This is a great time. And you see it all over Twitter. Totally. You see people talking about it. It becomes almost chatter on the cocktail circuit. But housing, that's such a key element of the economy, both as an indicator and as a real reflection of how people are feeling, right?
Exactly. And right now, when you're thinking about coronavirus, a lot of the economic indicators, what people are really using to try to figure out how the consumer is feeling right now, it's just too early to really know. Headed into spring home buying season, everything looked pretty good, but the virus fears have really only taken over in the past couple of weeks. So we'll have to see what happens.
And what's key about what you just said, too, is you really want people to go out and buy a home for the first time, because that increases economic activity, right? You buy a home and then you do a lot of stuff to it, or you buy stuff to fill it. So there's that as a catalyst.
Whereas just refining, yep, cool.
Right.
Speaking of the virus, I just want to bring you one headline crossing Bloomberg right now. The U.S. Senate clearing a $7.8 billion emergency coronavirus funding bill that has already passed the House. Presumably it goes to the president next. He is expected to sign it. So some movement there in terms of funds being cleared for the coronavirus.
Right. So that's going on in Washington as fiscal moves, if you will, are put in place to kind of help combat the virus. Liz, so we've got the Federal Reserve meeting in a couple of weeks here. I think the expectations, there's momentum building that we're going to get another rate cut by the Fed.
Right. I mean, most of the economists that I speak to say that the Fed, and it's interesting you just brought up the fiscal headlines, I was going to say the Fed is believed to come in again in March at their meeting, and they'll likely cut rates again. But what I was trying to get to is that people feel like still we need the fiscal support.
Right.
So it's good this is happening, and this is a global thing. Around the world, people, are looking for fiscal support because monetary policy, it can only go so far. And I think that's what's part of what's going on in the Treasury market is they realize, okay, the Fed is cutting, they might cut again, but we need more. So I think we need a lot of measures because, like Claire was saying, with this virus, number one, the indicators aren't there yet, but it's also hard to gauge, how many people will not be able to work and who won't want to go out to dinner, and how bad is this going to get? It's difficult to know.
Well, and I just got to say, so the next Fed meeting is March 18th. We'll get a decision, and here we are already at one and a quarter in terms of the range. Like, the Fed is running out of room should we indeed fall into a recession. So fiscal policy will be the tool in many ways that's going to be necessary.
All right. Our thanks to you both. Thank you so much. Liz Cappo, McCormick Bond, and FX reporter for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from New Jersey, and Claire Boston, credit reporter for Bloomberg, here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Just want to let you know, as we look at the equity markets, back to them for a second, stocks at their lows of the day now. The S&P down about 3.7%, definitely taking a leg down in the last kind of 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, back to its the lows of the day, really. 10-year yield, 0.92. If you look at the 5-year node, it's at a yield of 0.66. That 2-year node, the shorter end of the yield curve, a yield of 0.57. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Troubles are mounting for the airline industry as travel demand crumbles on coronavirus fears. In just the last 2 days, Southwest warned of a hit to first quarter sales. and United and JetBlue announced schedule cutbacks. Coronavirus fears continue to whipsaw Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 948. The S&P 500 down 106. The Nasdaq Composite down 263. J.P. Morgan Chase is taking steps to stay ahead of the coronavirus. It's dispersing many New York and London traders to alternate sites to reduce the risk of disruption. It's also prohibiting employees from different sites from attending the same meetings. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey may go even further away, telling an investor conference that he'll reconsider working from Africa due to the coronavirus and everything else going on. Dorsey faces a challenge from an activist investor who wants him out as CEO. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/
Rain Mac cashback, umbrella cashback, newspaper coat rack, coffee pan of chocolat, podcast cashback, rucksack cashback, splashing through the puddles in your Wellington boots to the bookshop cashback, bus back cashback, clothes on the radiator, television cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go, guess what? Cashback. Get cash back on whatever you buy with no annual fee. Only with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100. Plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search Check Before You Tick online today.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For something for everyone. Carpet Right. For life.
You could find a £5, a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Down the right side of the lane, stops at the elbow jumper, up and good.
TuneIn is your destination for college basketball, and it's free. This week we have a must-hear game: North Carolina at Duke.
Two for the win. No, tapped up by Moore, and in at the buzzer. Moore makes it in.
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern. With college basketball tune-in, hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Thursday. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly watching the market. And a big reason for a lot of the concerns, of course, is those more cases really showing up in terms of the coronavirus. We're now looking at more than 96,000 globally.
All right, we're going to get into that with one of our experts down at Johns Hopkins, sort of do some myth busting and figure out where we may go from here. In the meantime, let's get back to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Jason Kelly. At or near the lows of the session, we are bouncing along the bottom right now with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Stocks are tumbling. Volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to rattle financial markets. Treasury yields sinking to record lows. Haven assets surge. Right now we have got the 10-year yield 0.92%. Gold up 2%, higher by 32 points. Right now $32, I should say, $16.69 the ounce on gold. Crude oil, West Texas Intermediate, lower now by 2.1%, $45.81 a barrel. Again, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. S&P 500 index down 112 points now. That is a drop of 3.6%. The Dow is down 988 points, a decline there of 3.7%. The NASDAQ Composite Index down 275 points, a drop there of 3%. Market volatility back again. Catherine Kaminsky is Chief Research Strategist at Alpha Simplex Group.
If you think about what market volatility means, it's lots of people moving at the same time. And when you have a 4.5% up day in the market and a 2% down day, what does that mean? I mean, it means people are coordinated. And that, to me, as a quant, is a red flag. I'm measuring some red flags in the market movements. And it just means we don't know what's going on.
Indeed, a red flag with the S&P down 3.6% right now. Southwest Airlines falling after warning that a drop in bookings will dent first quarter revenue, underscoring the coronavirus's deepening impact on U.S. air travel. Shares of Southwest Airlines, ticker LUV, down 3.8%. Among some of the other airline names, United, UAL, the parent there, down 10%. American Airlines Group down 10.9%. Delta down 6.7%. And one other story we're following, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey says he will consider working remotely from Africa in 2020 due to the coronavirus and, quote, everything else going on. Twitter shares lower now by 2.8%. And that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, there's a lot of information, and I dare say some misinformation out there about what is going on with the coronavirus, its spread. Let's get a medical perspective now. For that, we turn to Dr. Amish Adalja, infectious disease physician at the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security at the Bloomberg School of Public Health. Joining us on the phone from Baltimore, and as you can probably tell by the name, the Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Mike Bloomberg, is the founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Dr. Adalja, thank you so much for joining Carol and myself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, so do some myth busting for us here. What are the most important things we need to know as just consumers, as humans, about where this virus stands right now?
Right now, we're in the early stages of a pandemic. This is a virus that really has never been containable because it's spread through the respiratory route and it's achieved efficient community, human-to-human spread. So this isn't something that quarantines and travel bans or airport screening is going to completely eliminate. We have to become ready in our communities all across the United States to see cases, cases that aren't linked to travel to any of these countries that you're reading about in the headlines, but that are occurring right here.
So, it's funny. I keep reading comparisons with whether it's SARS or Ebola or MERS, but I think a lot of people say, well, wait a minute, is it as bad as the common flu where we know thousands of people, in the United States die from, in any given year? So what's the difference? What makes this one maybe more worrisome?
Well, what's more worrisome is that it's a novel virus, it's new to the human species, and there's not pre-existing immunity to it, meaning that many people who are exposed are going to get infected. Now, while most people are going to have mild illness and recover fine, it's going to be like a severe cold, there are going to be individuals who need to be hospitalized, who may have pneumonia, and there are going to be some that actually die from it. We're still trying to figure out what the case fatality ratio is, and it's very hard to do because we don't have full testing of populations all over the world, and many mild cases may not be getting counted. So when you see that 3.6% or so that the WHO is quoting, that often is that's what's called severity bias, meaning that it's biased by who's getting tested. Because if you look at a country like South Korea, for example, where they've done extensive testing, that case fatality ratio drops to 0.6. Those numbers might not mean much to listeners, but just for reference, the seasonal flu is 0.01%. So this is still higher than seasonal flu. We don't know where it's going to ultimately fall, but it seems to be more severe